Chapter 198. Klinsmann drank all the blood in the glass in one gulp and threw it down forcefully. The crystal glass reflected countless rays of light, adding some color to the dark world. The holy light of the church was a stark contrast to the Dracula family's ancient body, which was full of dark energy. Klinsmann said coldly, "The Dracula family has existed in this world for more than a day or two. It's been a year or two. The conflict with filial piety is not something that can be solved. However, I really want to know what could make the four cardinals of the Vatican and the chief judge of the Inquisition come in person. I'm afraid that I, Klinsmann, do not have the charisma to do so." The leading old man said, "Your Highness is a smart man. We have made an exception and gathered in London because we have something to ask of you. The Dracula family has a long history. If your Highness can't agree to two of our conditions, we can forget about today's matter." Klinsmann's eyes flashed, and he said, "Then I want to hear what conditions could make you come here." The old man said, "Let me introduce you to your Highness. I am Cardinal Paul Gasol of St. Paul's Cathedral. These are Cardinal Novi Sky, Ginobili, and Parker. The last one is the chief judge of the Vatican, Yingzatsi. Our two conditions are not difficult for your Highness. First, we hope that your Highness can lead the Dracula family away from London and give up the Dracula castle. Second, we want your Highness to hand over a person. If your Highness can fulfill these two conditions, we can leave immediately and pretend that nothing happened." Blood-red solubility gushed out of Klinsmann's body and condensed into a blood-red bat shadow. The edges of the shadow were golden, and the faint golden light seemed to be filled with an evil aura. "As the patriarch of the Deku family, if the castle is destroyed in my hands, I will become the greatest sinner of the family. As for handing over the person, I don't understand why all the cardinals would come all the way here." Paul Gasol was not affected by the energy released by Klinsmann. He said calmly, "Not long ago, a woman should have come here. I think that with your Highness's intelligence, you should know who I'm talking about." Klinsmann was shocked and frowned. "I didn't expect that." Even the Vatican was coveting the $100 million. Since when did the red-robed archbishops become assassins? This is the first time I've heard of it. Before Gasol could open his mouth, Cardinal Novitsky, who was at the side, became a little impatient. He walked to Gasol's side and said coldly, "Klinsmann, don't think about wasting time. Only you can save yourself now. The Vatican and the underground world had always been enemies, but that woman was extremely important to the Vatican. Hand her over, and we'll let you leave freely. Otherwise, today will be the day the Lord gives birth to you." Klinsmann could not help but smile bitterly. If possible, he was willing to temporarily hand over the person the church wanted and leave this place. Although the ancient castle was important, the survival of the Deku family was more important. The experts of the church also understood that if they led their subordinates to escape in different directions at the same time, it would be difficult for them to stop them. However, that person was not in the castle at all. "Oh, Chiyu, you've really brought me a lot of trouble." Su Qing looked at Klinsmann's fluctuating expression, and after exchanging a glance with Ming Ming, she walked to his side and said in a clear voice, "You've come at a bad time. That person left not long ago and did not stay for long. There's no way we can hand her over." Paul drew a cross in front of him. "The Lord will forgive you. All evil will be driven away by the light." The four cardinals stepped forward at the same time, and milky white holy light condensed into a huge light wall in the air. As they stepped forward, a huge pressure pressed down in the direction of the ancient castle. Su Qing was so angry that she wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Klinsmann. "It's useless. Why would these guys believe us? If that's the case, we can only fight today." There was a hint of apology in Ming Ming's eyes. "Klinsmann, I'm sorry. I didn't expect to bring you so much trouble. Chiyu hasn't returned yet. I'm willing to help you fight against the enemy together." Klinsmann sighed. "What's going to come will come. Since Satan has decided to abandon our Lord Dracula, things will still happen even without Chiyu's arrival. Miss Ming Ming, if it comes to the last moment, please take her away from here." After saying this, he strode forward. Blood-red light soared into the sky, and the huge blood bat suddenly raised the oppressive atmosphere on the Dracula castle's side. The experts of the Dracula family followed behind Klinsmann and charged toward the church's side. The battle that concerned the survival of the Dracula family was about to begin. All the Blood Clan members had a bloodthirsty look on their faces. Without needing Klinsmann's order, these experts of the Blood Clan who had lived together for at least hundreds of years began to slowly disperse. Only in a larger battlefield could they display their advantage in speed. Pairs of different colored bat wings emerged from their backs, and the Blood Clan members gradually approached the experts of the church in a three-dimensional formation. A pair of huge blood-red wings emerged from Klinsmann's back. His elegance had been completely replaced by an evil blood-red light. The blood-red light that was filled with a tinge of golden light burst out, fully demonstrating his strength as a blood prince. Although he wasn't the most powerful blood emperor, Klinsmann was confident that he could at least hold off a red-robed archbishop. However, he could only hold off a red-robed archbishop. It had been a long time since he had fought with the strongest experts of the church. Since the outcome was already decided, he let go of everything and was filled with the desire to fight. The chief judge, Inzaghi, floated out. His movements were as light as an ape's, and in a flash, he was already in front of the church. "Leave Klinsmann to me. I'll leave the rest of the Blood Clan to the archbishops." Although he was the highest chief judge in the Inquisition, there was still a gap between his position and that of the red-robed archbishop, so his tone was very polite. A silver-white holy sword burned in Inzaghi's hand, and the sharp and holy energy pressed toward Klinsmann without showing any weakness. Klinsmann's eyes were full of evil, and there was no light of life in his blood-red eyes. With a low roar, all the vampires rushed toward the experts of the church. The Dracula family was the largest and oldest family among the vampires. Although they were facing the four red-robed bishops who were far more powerful than them, they did not panic at the beginning of the battle. They seemed to be charging forward, but each of them released a blood-red light and immediately rose into the sky. The evil energy in the sky was like a large net, covering the experts of the church below. This was the Dracula castle, and it had a strong effect on the Blood Clan's energy. The four red-robed bishops were very powerful. Perhaps they would not be affected by the evil energy here, but it was hard to say for the other experts of the church. The four red-robed bishops looked at each other, and Novi Sky said in a deep voice, "All members of the church, get into formation." The 20 or so experts of the church immediately formed a circle and surrounded the four red-robed archbishops in the center. Holy light was ignited from their bodies and formed a giant milky white light shield. Other than the judge, Inzaghi, all the members of the church were enveloped in it. The blood-red light immediately disappeared as soon as it came into contact with the milky white light shield. It was completely purified. The four red-robed bishops were chanting something. Their voices were very deep, but the tone was very strange. It did not belong to any of the modern languages, and it was very difficult to understand. However, this didn't affect the performance of the rest. Under the full power of the powerhouses of the church, the thick holy light was like an iron wall. No matter which angle the vampires attacked from, they couldn't hurt the people of the church within the holy light. The four red-robed bishops took a defensive position as soon as they came up, but Klinsmann and the chief judge, Inzaghi, had already begun to attack. Unlike the red-robed bishops who mainly cultivated holy light and their own holy energy, the inquisitors cultivated all kinds of powerful physical skills and martial arts. Klinsmann's speed was indeed very fast, but Inzaghi was not slow at all. The chief judge, who looked to be in his 50s, had extremely powerful holy power. This holy power was not cultivated. Every true powerhouse of the Vatican had inherited a portion of the holy power from the previous generation's powerhouses, along with their own hard work and cultivation. Otherwise, the people of the church were all ordinary people. How could their strength compete with the covenant of darkness? The inheritance of this holy power could be said to be the top secret in the church. In a loud bang, Klinsmann had already collided with Inzaghi. He was shocked to find that the holy sword in Inzaghi's hand was not energy, but a physical object formed by highly compressed energy. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. However, despite his shock, Klinsmann's attack did not stop at all. The holy sword in Inzaghi's hand maintained the simplest attack method. Every time he swung it, a silver cross-shaped light would appear and envelop Klinsmann's body. Klinsmann's speed was too fast, and he also had the ability to teleport. This made it difficult for Inzaghi's attack to track his body. The two of them collided when Klinsmann attacked Inzaghi. Although Inzaghi could not teleport, his reaction was undoubtedly extremely fast. He could use the holy sword to block Klinsmann's attack under different circumstances. Klinsmann was shocked, but Inzaghi was even more surprised. According to the records of the church, vampires were actually just a dark creature race that was subordinate to the covenant of darkness. Although they were widely known in the world, their true strength was not taken seriously by the church. However, this time, Klinsmann brought Inzaghi a great surprise. His strength had reached the level of a blood prince. At the very least, he brought a lot of trouble to Inzaghi. His attacks were full of evil aura, and his erratic teleportation ability put the presiding judge at a complete disadvantage. The battle continued. Klinsmann attacked with all his might while paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. It was better than he had expected. At least for now, the four red-robed archbishops had not attacked with all their strength. They were only steadily defending that area, preventing the vampires from really causing them any real damage. Ming Ming and Su Qing had also arrived on the battlefield. A loud cry came from Ming Ming's mouth. When her body changed, both the vampires flying in the air and the experts of the church hidden in the holy light couldn't help but be stunned. The first thing that appeared was a circle of colorful light. It was like a rainbow. The first thing that appeared was a rainbow-like ring of light. The faint light floated up and revolved around Ming Ming's body. Following that, the rainbow-colored light gradually separated, forming pieces of rainbow-colored light. When a rainbow-colored light gradually became clear, everyone realized that it was actually rainbow-colored feathers. The feathers were like snowflakes that constantly revolved around Ming Ming's body. The rainbow-colored feathers gradually condensed, and when the dazzling light disappeared, Ming Ming's delicate body was perfectly presented in front of everyone. The rainbow-colored feathers had become her best armor, and her entire body was covered in feathers. Her arms had already turned into huge wings, and a snow-white feather stood up behind her head. Another loud cry rang out, and the surging energy released from Ming Ming's body caused everyone present to be shocked. Ming Ming flew up. No, to be more accurate, she jumped up. She spread her arms to the sides and glided toward the holy light with the help of the two giant colorful wings. The powerhouses of the Holy See clearly did not expect such a variable to appear. The four red-robed archbishops who came this time could be said to be the most powerful beings in the Holy See other than the Pope. They could clearly feel that the energy aura released from Ming Ming's body did not belong to a vampire, and there was no sense of evil. Although it couldn't be said to be holy, a righteous aura was released from Ming Ming's body. The huge energy was completely contained, as if the colorful feathers were full of energy. What is this? She looks like a beautiful rainbow bird. But does such a bird exist in this world? The four cardinals were puzzled at the same time. At this moment, a voice rang in their ears. This is the Zodiac guardian warrior from the east. She is the Zodiac rooster. Our target this time is brought along by another Zodiac guardian warrior. After listening to the voice's explanation, the four cardinals understood a little. The loud cry from Ming Ming didn't affect them at all. Noveski let out a low grunt, and a golden scepter appeared in his hand. As he pointed the scepter forward, a holy light was suddenly released from the milky white light shield and shrouded Ming Ming's body. The main reason why the Vatican had chosen this method of attack was to reduce their losses. The four red-robed archbishops also knew that although they were far stronger than the Deku family in terms of overall strength, their true advantage lay in the four red-robed archbishops and the presiding judge, Inzaghi. Ordinary experts of the church weren't much stronger than these vampires. Therefore, in order to avoid losses, they set up the Holy Light spiritual formation with the 4 red-robed archbishops as the core, not to mention the vampires outside. Not to mention the vampires outside. Even if the 3 dreadful demon kings came together, they might not be able to break it. Under the premise of a stable defense, they used the powerful holy light to attack the surrounding vampires. Although this would consume a lot of energy, at least their losses would be much smaller, and they wouldn't be surrounded by the surrounding vampires. Seeing a ray of holy light with a diameter of more than 1 meter shrouding her, a rainbow-like light flashed in Ming Ming's eyes. Her arms and huge wings suddenly folded in front of her, and her charging body instantly stopped. 2 rainbow-like, blade-like rays of light crisscrossed in front of her, meeting the attack of the Holy Light spiritual formation. Screech! An ear-piercing grinding sound rang out. The milky white holy light was actually split into 2 by the rainbow-colored rays of light from Ming Ming's wings, passing by both sides of Ming Ming's body. Meanwhile, Ming Ming's delicate body leaned to the side, passing through the holy light spiritual formation. This situation instantly shocked the hearts of the 4 cardinals at the same time. Nowitzki was very clear of how powerful his attack was. It was the purest holy light, containing a huge amount of high-purity, holy energy. For the opponent to be able to split it into 2 was simply unbelievable. Actually, Ming Ming's attack just now was thanks to the Capricorn constellation guardian, Miero. Ever since the battle between Chi Yu and Miero, he carefully studied Miero's Azura blade. Not only did he apply it to his own ability, he also taught it to Ming Ming. With Chi Yu's exquisite control of energy, not only did he perfect the Hell Azura blade, he also combined it with Ming Ming's own situation. As a chicken Zodiac warrior, one of Ming Ming's strongest attacks was the Iron Wings technique. Applying the Azura blade technique to the Iron Wings technique was like adding wings to a tiger for Ming Ming. At this moment, Ming Ming's strength had already reached the 6 clouds level. When she was with Chi Yu, no one felt that she was very powerful. However, when she truly displayed her strength, everyone knew that this little girl's strength was not the slightest bit inferior to Klinsmann's. The rainbow-colored rays of light once again emitted from the rainbow-colored wings. This time, the target was the Holy Light spiritual formation. Ever since Ming Ming's Iron Wings art had been upgraded to the Azura Iron Wings art realm, this was the first time she had truly displayed it. Previously, when she had split open the Holy Light, it had greatly boosted her confidence. She knew that if she wanted to win today's battle, then she had to first get rid of those old fellows dressed in red. As the saying goes, the newborn cow is not afraid of tigers. She did not feel any fear just because the other party was a cardinal. Like a cicada's wings, the 2 Azura Iron Wings condensed with a huge thundercloud force slashed at the Holy Light spiritual formation at lightning speed. An ear-piercing grinding sound rang out, and Ming Ming cried out in alarm. In the instant her Azura Iron Wings technique cut into the Holy Light spiritual array, she could clearly feel an enormous and irresistible energy rushing towards her from all directions. That scorching and holy aura produced a huge rebounding force, and although her Azura Iron Wings technique was sharp enough, under the huge force of this all-encompassing attack, her delicate body was still flung into the air, drifting through the air. Ming Yu's sudden attack had alerted the red-robed archbishops. Their Holy Light spiritual formation had been completed, and the 4 red-robed archbishops had become the main attackers in the formation. The other experts of the Vatican released their powerful energy auras to sustain the energy consumption of the Holy Light spiritual formation. As for the 4 red-robed archbishops, they raised the golden scepters in their hands. In an instant, dozens of beams of light shot out from the Holy Light spiritual formation and enveloped the surrounding vampires. The vampires' reactions were extremely fast. Not only did they have the advantage of speed, but they also had the ultrasonic waves they inherited from bats. They did not even need to use their eyes to sense the approaching danger. In an instant, the experts of the Dracula family immediately flew higher into the sky, quickly dodging the holy light spiritual formation that was emitted from the holy light spiritual formation. The attacks of the cardinals continued, but all of their attacks missed. Not a single ray of holy light was able to hit the vampires. After about 5 minutes of attacking, the vampires flying in the air felt relieved. They all felt that these legendary powerhouses of the Vatican seemed to be nothing much and did not have any real abilities. So what if their energy was a little stronger? Their attacks were like a mosquito shooting cannons, and they could not cause any harm to the other party at all. Thinking of this, the fear in their hearts gradually disappeared. The experts of the Dracula family even began to quietly approach the holy light spiritual formation, looking for an opportunity to launch another attack. A few Grand Dukes, who were trying to curry favor with Klinsmann, quietly approached Klinsmann and Inzaghi. They were prepared to launch a sneak attack on Inzaghi and give him a hard time. Just when the vampires thought that this battle was no longer scary, a sudden change occurred. In midair, the originally dark sky suddenly lit up. The curtain of darkness that had been shrouding the Dracula family all along shattered without warning. The high-level vampires were slightly better off, but the dozens of vampires below the marquee level screamed at the same time under the illumination of the sunlight. They were barely able to release their sanguine light to protect their bodies, but their combat strength was greatly reduced. Immediately, dozens of holy light beams shot out from the holy light spirit array. The vampires, whose bodies had paused for a moment, were immediately purified by the holy light. The holy light emitted by the arch-cardinal did not leave a single strand of hair for the sanguine. The blood race themselves were stupid enough to treat the cardinals as fools. At this moment, they were horrified to discover that not only had the curtain of darkness in the sky been destroyed by the massive holy light, but a huge net formed by holy light was also slowly descending from the sky. At the same time, a huge net made of holy light was slowly descending from the sky. The semicircular net of light had blocked all possible escape routes. Perhaps only a child could pass through the air attack between the net of light. The four cardinals had expended so much energy to condense such a powerful holy light net. Their goal was obvious. They were not going to let any vampires go. They were going to kill them all here. Not only did the sunlight affect the ordinary vampires, but even Klinsmann's speed was suppressed to a certain extent. Just as the momentum of his crazy attacks weakened a little, Inzaghi immediately seized the opportunity and dragged the battle into a stalemate. Inzaghi's massive holy light was constantly affecting Klinsmann's state. The two of them had clashed several times in a row. Blood was already flowing from the corners of their mouths. Ming Ming was stunned by the scene in front of her. Only now did she completely believe Yama's description of the Vatican. The cardinals were indeed extremely powerful existences. What should she do now? The trouble could be said to have been caused by Chi Yu, and she was his woman. Since he wasn't here, this responsibility should be borne by her. Thinking of this, Ming Ming's gaze became abnormally resolute. She leaped up and floated in the air. She shouted, "All blood race, follow me." As she spoke, her delicate body that was flying in the air spread out her arms to both sides of her body, and something strange happened again. The rainbow light suddenly lit up. Clearly visible energy elements surged toward Ming Ming's body. With Chi Yu's source of nature's transformation and the guidance he gave to Ming Ming in her cultivation, she had already broken through the Six Clouds realm. What was happening to her now was the second stage of the Chicken Zodiac warrior's origin mutation. Flying in the air, Ming Ming's petite body brought with it a rainbow. The dazzling rainbow looked very alluring. Ming Ming's petite body had obviously expanded a little. Those colorful feathers had an additional layer of metallic light. The head's long feather had already turned silver. Countless rainbow-like feathers revolved around Ming Ming's petite body, forming a huge vortex of feathers. Within this huge vortex, Ming Ming's energy was rapidly increasing. The petite body disappeared. A huge bird appeared in the air out of nowhere. It was a huge bird like a peacock. However, compared to a peacock, the light it emitted was much more dazzling. Its body was more than 8 meters long, and its wingspan was also more than 8 meters. Its huge body soared in the air. The huge energy brought with it an incomparably sharp aura. It drew a beautiful rainbow light in the air and rushed toward the light net in the air. The four red-clothed archbishops were stunned by the scene in front of them. They even forgot to continue launching their holy light attacks. Ming Ming, who was flying in the air, became the focus of everyone present. Every feather on her body released a gem-like light. That surging divine light, that beautiful appearance. The huge bird body had already rushed in front of the holy light net in the blink of an eye. Just like how Ryue could use the divine dragon true body after reaching the six-cloud state. What Ming Ming was using now was the strongest ability of her current level. It was called Phoenix Chick Transformation. At the moment, she still couldn't truly advance from the chicken realm to the phoenix realm. However, after breaking through to the six-cloud level, she already possessed the aura of a phoenix. Combined with the second stage of nature mutation, she completed the strongest ability of the chicken warrior after the six-cloud level for the first time. That huge rainbow bird was the predecessor of a phoenix. The rainbow bird's body stopped 10 meters away from the holy light net. The fearful vampires had no other choice. Under Su Qing's lead, they followed behind Ming Ming. The huge rainbow wings spread open and suddenly closed in the middle. Two rainbow blades of light that were 3 meters wide floated out. The huge blades of light spun and sliced intensely, directly pouncing towards the net of light in front of them. An ear-piercing, grinding sound rang out. Countless specks of light exploded in the air. The energy fluctuations caused the heavens and earth to change color. The originally seamless holy light net was forcibly cut open by the Phoenix Chick Transformation by Ming Ming. An irreparable gap instantly appeared in the enormous destructive energy. Ming Ming didn't rush out from the gap. The noble rainbow bird turned around and dove down from the sky. Rays of rainbow light shot out from her huge wings. The milky white holy light released by the four red-cloaked archbishops were cut in half by the Azura iron wings. No, it should be called Phoenix Chick Slash. Ming Ming relied on her own strength to complete the mission of covering the retreat of the Dracula family vampires. The four red-cloaked archbishops had never seen such a situation before. Although vampires could also transform and grow wings compared to the rainbow bird in front of them, the transformation of vampires was far inferior. If they weren't enemies, the four red-cloaked archbishops who believed in God might have thought that the noble rainbow bird was a divine bird sent by the heavens. The four of them went silent at the same time. They didn't launch any more holy light attacks. Their leader, Paulo Gasol, nodded and said, "Such an opponent is worthy of us using our true strength. Novitsky, I'll have to trouble you." Novitsky nodded and placed the scepter in his hand horizontally. He took a few steps back and arrived at the center of the holy light spiritual formation. A high-pitched chant immediately came out his mouth. The other three red-cloaked archbishops stood guard for him. The enormous energy aura was completely withdrawn. Immediately after, a powerful golden light shot into the sky and brought Novitsky's body out of the holy light spiritual formation. In the blink of an eye, he was wrapped in the holy light and condensed into a golden ball of light in the air. Chapter 199. Once upon a time, they still drooled over Ming Ming's beauty, but they only treated her as an ordinary human beauty to serve. However, just now it was this human beauty who had suddenly transformed into the rainbow bird in front of them and pulled them back from the brink of death. This magical scene was destined to be forever engraved in the Dracula family's memory, and no one could erase it. The faint divine light continued to grow stronger. Ming Ming floated in the air, but she did not continue to attack. After all, the opponent's holy light did not last long. Looking at the holy light that looked like a golden egg hundreds of meters away, she felt a little uneasy. Originally, with Ming Ming's strength, she would not have been able to maintain the Phoenix's transformation for a long time. However, after Chiyu helped her transform her body with the energy of the origin of nature, the situation changed. The transformation of the origin of nature not only changed the quality of her meridians, but could also compress energy better. This way, The compressed energy would not only be smaller in volume, but it could also last longer in battle. More importantly, after the transformation, Ming Ming's energy recovery speed was much faster than before. Therefore, she could better support the Phoenix's state. An intense golden light suddenly erupted. Cracks could even be seen on the edges of the golden light. A long roar came from within the golden light, and a tall figure floated out. It was a handsome man who looked to be in his 20s. His long golden hair draped over his back, and his blue eyes seemed to be able to see through everything in the world. There was not the slightest bit of impurity in them. His snow-white skin-tight clothes outlined his perfect figure. 6 pure white wings flapped gently on his back, and his 3-meter-tall body was full of a holy aura. His elegant and noble temperament could easily captivate girls. Seeing his appearance, Ming Ming could not help but feel her heart tighten. She recalled what Yemo had said. She knew that this man with 6 wings in front of her was probably an archangel. She was afraid that he was an archangel. "Hello, esteemed lady. I'm very happy to meet you. The pure aura on your body intoxicates me. I'm a 6-winged seraph and also an archangel in heaven. You can call me Fei-er. My friends call me Guang Yin Tian because I have the most handsome face in the world." The angel of light, Ming Ming, spread her phoenix wings and looked at him quietly. "What does your appearance have to do with me? If you're really a messenger sent by the heavens, then you shouldn't be killing the innocent." Raphael's gaze swept over the vampires. All the vampires couldn't help but tremble subconsciously when they met his gaze. The holy aura intensified the fear in their hearts. "No, honorable lady, these people are not innocent. They believe in the power of darkness, and their souls have already fallen. They must be purified in order to be reborn. I'm willing to help them purify themselves and give them a chance to turn over a new leaf. Isn't that good?" Ming Ming looked at Raphael coldly and said, "Since that's the case, then let's fight. If you want to hurt them, you'll have to step over my dead body first." Raphael's handsome face revealed a trace of dissatisfaction. "Esteemed lady, your aura doesn't make me want to fight you. I can feel that you don't belong here. Why do you want to go against the heavens for these lowly creatures? This won't do you any good. Why don't we become friends? I really admire your temperament." Even the experts of the Vatican were dumbfounded. None of them had expected that the angel of light, Raphael, who had used his own body as a foundation, would actually say such a thing. All of them couldn't help but reveal expressions that they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This archangel seemed a little too naive. Ming Ming gently flapped her wings. "Let's fight. We won't have any common language. I'm from the East. You can call me the Zodiac Guardian God Warrior." Raphael's expression changed. "You're from the East? Are you the subordinate of that Dongfang Shindi? This is going to be troublesome. Should I fight or not? Lady, you're really putting me in a difficult position. We don't want to have a conflict with the East. However, as you can see, there's so many dark creatures here. If I don't fight, I'm afraid that the Emperor Heaven will punish me when I return. Why don't we both take a step back? You leave, and I return to heaven. This way, I'll be able to account for myself." Looking at Raphael's sincere expression, Ming Ming suddenly thought of a person. It was Tang Sung from the Journey to the West. This guy was obviously very powerful, but he didn't have any killing intent. This made Ming Ming have a good impression of him. Just because you don't fight doesn't mean that the people of the Vatican won't. "I'm sorry, but I appreciate your kindness. Let's fight." Raphael looked at Ming Ming and sighed. "Why do you have to do this? If that's the case, I promise I won't take your life. After all, you're such a beautiful lady. You're the best work of heaven." His words made the other 3 red-robed archbishops feel embarrassed. This was a big loss of face, especially since Raphael was from the East. Ming Ming said impatiently, "Are you done? Are you a love-struck fool?" She suddenly closed her wings, and 2 phoenix fledgling slashes flew towards Raphael's body. Raphael's seemingly gentle eyes suddenly became sharp. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, and a golden light exploded horizontally. It was like a horizontal barrier, and it met the 2 rainbow lights. A slight collision came from the point of contact between the 2 different colors. The huge rainbow bird's body shook slightly, and it let out a loud cry. The colorful light disappeared, and the remaining golden light also disappeared with this loud and clear chirp. Raphael smiled. Good. It's actually a sound wave attack. It's my honor to meet an opponent like you. He directly pounced toward Raphael. The golden longsword condensed in Raphael's hand. Similarly, a golden, peaceful slash was unleashed from his hands. He didn't know how much stronger Inzaghi was. The golden light shone towards Ming Ming. The 6 wings on Raphael's back straightened at the same time, and a faint golden light condensed towards his body from the air. His eyes also turned golden. Raphael, the angel of light, wasn't particularly strong among the 6 archangels in heaven. He was only ranked second to last, but he was still a 6-winged seraph. Even if he was slightly weaker than the Dreadlord of Hell, he wasn't that much weaker. The crosslight slash was filled with holy energy. This time, Ming Ming was at a disadvantage. It was still the Phoenix fledgling slash, and the energy was completely condensed into its sharpness. It looked like a large area of light slashes, but the real attack power was only in a single line. The rest of the light was just an afterimage. There was a rumble. The fledgling Phoenix slash disappeared. Raphael's golden cross light slash was also successfully cut through. But this time, the condensed energy didn't disperse. Instead, it turned into rays of golden light and chased after Ming Ming. Ming Ming let out an ear-piercing cry, and the light slashes slowed down under the impact of the sound waves. Ming Ming spread her wings, and streaks of fledgling Phoenix slash flew through the air, cutting the light slashes into smaller light spots. But what surprised her was that although the cross light slash was cut, the attack power was still there. This situation caused Ming Ming to panic. After all, her combat experience was much worse than she used. She had no choice but to spread her wings and retreat. She didn't use fledgling Phoenix slash anymore, and a large area of rainbow energy condensed into a light screen, blocking the golden light attacks. With a concentrated explosion, Raphael's attack was finally dispelled. However, the rainbow bird that Ming Ming had transformed into was already 500 meters away. Her chest was heaving up and down. Blocking Raphael's attack had consumed a large amount of her energy. Raphael smiled and said, "Beautiful lady, I have to admit that you're very strong, much stronger than I imagined. However, you're no match for the Blazing Angel. Admit defeat, I don't want to hurt you. Your linear attack just now was enough to surprise me, but my cross light slash can break through it bit by bit. Although it looks like a cross light slash, it's actually made up of countless connected energy spots. Your attack won't have any effect on me." Although this guy in front of her was very long-winded, Ming Ming had to admit that he was very strong. He wasn't someone she could fight against. However, could she admit defeat? If she did, then no one from the Dracula family, including Su Qing, will be able to leave this place alive. She had brought the troublesome Qi Yu along with her. As the guardian of the East and the daughter of a general, Ming Ming would never back down in the face of danger, even though she was a girl. "That's right. I admit that you're stronger than me. However, you can only hurt others if you step over my dead body." The rainbow bird's huge body flew up again. This time, there was no young phoenix slash. Instead, countless rainbow-colored feathers floated out and formed a huge dragon fist. The fist revolved around Ming Ming's delicate body and flew towards Raphael. As they fought, Klinsmann was already in a difficult situation. In terms of strength, as a blood prince, he was still slightly inferior to Inzaghi. Moreover, the sunlight in the sky affected him to a certain extent. At this time, in the face of Inzaghi's increasingly powerful attacks, he could only rely on teleportation to dodge most of the time instead of fighting back. More and more poisonous blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The loss of blood, the source of vampire's energy, had already doomed him to failure. Paul Gasol said in a deep voice within the Holy Light Spirit formation, "It's time to end everything. Let me join hands to destroy the rest of the vampires, and then find out the whereabouts of that woman from Klinsmann." The other 2 cardinals nodded at the same time. The three of them raised their golden scepters, and a huge amount of holy light began to condense. Klinsmann was still fighting bitterly. Ming Ming was also entangled by Raphael, the angel of Shaoyan. Although Raphael didn't want to hurt Ming Ming, Ming Ming's strength was much weaker than his. It was impossible for her to break free from his entanglement. Feeling the rising holy energy within the holy light spirit formation, all the vampires felt the aura of death. Su Qing shouted, "We are noble vampires. Do you want to wait for death? All vampires, listen to my command. Gather all your power. Let's stake it all on this. Even if we die, we will die in battle." With Su Qing's reminder, the vampires remembered that they still had the strength to resist. They wanted to escape from the depths of their hearts. But they also knew that if they ran now, once the blood inheritance virus broke out, it would be many times more miserable than dying below the Saint Plane. If they were truly destined to die, then death would no longer be scary. The eyes of the dukes, marquises, and earls once again burned with a blood-red radiance. With Su Qing in the lead, the enormous blood-red energy converged into a long river, like a blood-red sun, preparing to carry out the final desperate throw. Paul Gasol, Ginobili, and Parker, the three cardinals, had calm expressions. In their eyes, these vampires were just the final struggle before death. How could these dark creatures resist the holy aura of the three of them? The intense holy light continued to expand. The milky white light looked very pure. The energy of the three cardinals condensed into one point and shot out from the holy light spirit formation at the same time. A huge amount of energy exploded at this moment. The radiance shone brightly, and the three beams of holy light condensed into one in the air. The milky white light turned into a gold color, streaked across the sky, and shot towards the vampires. Su Qing screamed. She had always been a stubborn girl, and she would never give in. It was just like how she had impulsively framed Qiyu in the past. For her own survival, for everything she hoped for, even if it was the last chance, she would fight to the end. All of the blood-colored energy that had been condensed suddenly shot out under her command. In terms of volume, the energy that had been condensed by so many vampires was not inferior to the holy energy of the church. However, in terms of the fundamental power, it was far inferior. A strange scene appeared. The golden pillar of light and the blood-red pillar of light collided in the air. The two incomparably large amounts of energy represented light and darkness respectively. The collision of the extreme energies immediately caused the ground within dozens of square kilometers to tremble violently. Cracks even appeared on the ground. Using energy to cause earthquakes, one could imagine how terrifying this energy was. The blood-colored energy immediately changed the moment it came into contact with the golden energy. The difference in strength was not something that could be made up for with determination. Although Su Qing and the vampires, who knew that they were doomed, had done their best, the Archcardinal's attack only slowed down for a moment before it gradually came crashing down on them. Everyone knew that when the golden energy entered the side of the vampires, it would be the moment their souls would scatter. Qing Ming Ming cried out in alarm. Her attack on Raphael immediately became like a storm. Countless rainbow-colored feathers were like sharp blades. Under Ming Ming's full strength, the overdrawn thundercloud force immediately became more than twice as strong. Raphael's face revealed a hint of solemnity. "Beautiful lady, why are you doing this?" Rays of golden light floated out from the 6 wings on his back. They were actually also golden feathers. Every feather was condensed from energy. The gold and rainbow colors condensed in the air, and a huge golden shadow shrouded down from the sky. At that time, a golden ring of light shrouded them. It was the Angel of Light, Raphael's restricted combat domain. This was a very special domain that was usually used to capture people. In this domain, all abilities similar to teleportation would lose their effects. At the same time, unless the user of the domain was defeated, the opponent would not be able to leave this domain. Raphael used his own power to restrict Ming Ming, not allowing her to rescue the vampires. Similarly, Seeing that Su Qing and the vampire's lives were in danger, Klinsmann also erupted. He no longer cared about preserving his strength. The golden light in the bloody light became unprecedentedly powerful, and the attack on Inzaghi suddenly became violent. Moreover, this time, he even gave up on dodging and completely collided with Inzaghi's energy. For a moment, surging roars accompanied by an energy storm raged in the air. Not far away, Dracula Castle had already begun to tremble slightly. A trace of disdain appeared in Inzaghi's eyes as he resisted Klinsmann's attack. A silver domain quietly appeared. His domain naturally could not be compared to Raphael's. The range of the domain was not large, only about 10 meters or so. However, this domain was very special. It was a speed domain and a deceleration domain. Originally, it was used on the opponent, but this time he used it on Klinsmann and himself at the same time. Under such circumstances, he and Klinsmann felt their bodies sink at the same time, and their speed suddenly dropped by a third. Inzaghi was not in a hurry to win. Anyway, the result of today's battle had already been decided. His gaze was enough to keep Klinsmann from saving the vampires. As long as the other vampires were killed, Klinsmann's final outcome would not be changed by any accident. The main purpose of the Vatican's visit this time was not to deal with the Dracula family, but for that person. Therefore, Klinsmann could not die yet. This was also why the red-robed archbishops only sent Inzaghi to deal with him. The bloody light in the air gradually retreated, and the color of the bloody light became darker and darker. However, even after being compressed, the bloody light still could not stop the golden light from advancing. Almost with the naked eye, one could see that at the place where the bloody light beam disappeared, the bloody light that was full of evil aura was melting like ice and snow. Although the light emitted by the golden light beam that was full of divine and holy aura had also weakened a little, it was obvious that its ultimate goal would still be achieved. At this moment, even if the vampires wanted to escape, it was too late. They had released all their energy, and their bodies no longer had the strength to escape. They could not even move. Ming Ming shouted, "Don't!" The bloody light had retreated to the last moment, and the first to bear the brunt was Su Qing, who was standing at the front. There was no fear in Su Qing's eyes. There was only determination in her beautiful eyes that flashed with bloody light. Amidst the mournful cries, he clearly erupted. A mist of blood gushed out of her body, mixed with the remaining energy, and rushed towards Raphael without reservation. Raphael's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Ming Ming to be so persistent. A golden shadow floated out. It was a shadow that was exactly the same as him. With a flash of light, it replaced his body and collided with Ming Ming's attack. Amidst the loud bang, even the golden holy light emitted by the three cardinals was weakened by the violent tremors. The blood-red light emitted by the vampires also disappeared under the violent energy fluctuations. The angel of light, Raphael, grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the first time he had been injured in the battle against Ming Ming. At this moment, Ming Ming's body was sent flying, heavily colliding with Raphael's strange domain that restricted combat. With a muffled sound, large amounts of blood constantly swirled out of her mouth. But even though she gave it her all, she still could not break out of this domain. The difference in strength made her final effort useless. Clearly, there was another person who also exploded. The bloody light was scattered by the energy fluctuations of the battle between Ming Ming and Raphael. The golden light also paused in the tremors, and in the next moment, it had already swallowed Su Qing's body. And at this moment, Inzaghi suddenly let out a monstrous roar. A deep bloody wound appeared on the chest of the chief judge, and his domain also disappeared at this moment. A blood-red figure appeared in front of Su Qing without warning, using his tall body to block the final bombardment of the golden holy light. With a loud bang, all the vampires were sent flying by the pure holy light. Having lost most of their energy, they didn't even have the strength to fly. One by one, they fell heavily to the ground. If it were not for the fact that the vampires' bodies were strong enough, the fall from the sky would have most likely killed them. Only 2 vampires had not yet fallen. One was Su Qing, who spread her wings to maintain her balance, and the other was the blood-red figure in front of her. Brother, Su Qing's mournful voice did not sound like it came from a human's mouth at all. Her hoarse voice was filled with endless hatred. Yes, at the last moment, Klinsmann used his own body to block the attack of the three cardinals. Although the golden holy light had been greatly shaken by the energy waves of Ming Ming and Raphael, it was still an attack launched by the three cardinals. However, it was still an attack launched by the three red-cloaked archbishops. Klinsmann's face was completely pale, but his body was still blood-red. At this moment, it was impossible to distinguish whether it was the blood-red energy of the Blood Prince or the Blood Prince's own blood. As it turned out, when Klinsmann saw that Su Biao's life was in danger, he completely unleashed his life essence that he had painstakingly cultivated for many years. With his primordial blood, he transformed it into a long sword and heavily bombarded Inzaghi's body. In the face of this sudden and terrifying attack, although Inzaghi resisted with all his strength, he still suffered serious injuries. And at the last moment, Klinsmann also unleashed all his potential. With the last teleportation of his life, he used his body to block in front of Su Qing. Su Qing had also lost most of her energy. She could only barely control her body and fall to the ground. She hugged Klinsmann tightly in her arms. Even in the face of death, she was not afraid, but at this moment, her heart was filled with fear. Raphael wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sighed. It's over. Everything is over. He shook his head gently, a trace of sadness in his eyes. Klinsmann's last attack was extremely terrifying, and so was Ming Ming's attack. Her strength was much lower than Raphael's, but she was still able to injure him. It was clear that Ming Ming had paid a huge price to do so. The rainbow light in the sky had long since dimmed. The rainbow-colored feathers had lost their original luster. The 8-meter-long giant bird's body was constantly shrinking. Her tearful eyes had already turned a little gray. There's a beautiful spring. Why did you do this? You showed me the stubbornness of the East, but do you think it's worth it to give up your life for this? Raphael murmured to himself. He did not even pay attention to the greetings of the three red-robed archbishops. The holy light's spiritual formation was deactivated because there was no need for it to exist anymore. All the vampires were seriously injured. Vampire Prince Klinsmann was not going to survive. Even the rainbow-colored bird, which should not have appeared, had already fallen to the ground under the attack of the Angel of Light, Raphael. Its life force was constantly fading away. Yes, just as Raphael had said, everything should be over, but was it really over? If he did not appear, perhaps it would be. But this time, he finally returned. The strongest of the guardians of the East, the king of the Zodiac guardian gods, he had returned. A black silhouette descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. Even Raphael couldn't see how the silhouette flew over. On the back of the black silhouette was a pair of golden wings filled with a terrifying aura, causing Raphael's heart to tremble slightly. His sorrowful gaze became sharp once again. He felt an extremely dangerous aura from the black silhouette with the golden wings. Chi Yu flew back. He did not take a plane. He had received news from the Powder Gem that Dracula Castle was under attack. He did not know how long he had been unconscious, so he did not dare to delay at all. If he were to fly back by plane, he did not know how long it would take, and he did not know if there would be a timely flight. By the time he rushed back to train, all the battles would probably be over. Therefore, he chose to fly. After finding passers-by and confirming his location, he immediately bought a map and flew towards London as fast as he could. With the magic of the ever-changing Xuanji realm method, he did not need to worry about being scanned by the radar of various countries during the flight. Germany was not too far away from winning after all. When the golden-winged rock eagle's soaring 90,000 kilometers technique was fully exerted, Chi Yu experienced its magic for the first time. Soaring 90,000 kilometers was already very fast in a short distance, but the advantage of speed was fully exerted when flying a long distance. As the flight distance increased, the ability of the soaring 90,000 kilometers technique was exerted to the limit. It took Chi Yu less than 2 hours to fly from Germany to London. During this period of time, Dracula Castle relied on the territory of the castle to resist the attacks of the Vatican, which was why Chi Yu was able to rush back at this time. As soon as he entered England's territory, he sensed danger from Ming Ming's spiritual connection. Ming Ming's crisis made Chi Yu unleash his potential to the limit and accelerate once again. However, when he saw the last collision of energy from afar and saw Klinsmann using his body to shield her, he knew that he was one step too late. The fury in his heart had reached an unprecedented limit. At this moment, Chi Yu was no longer Ink Kieran, but Ink Kieran who was extremely furious. The unprecedented strong murderous intent made his silver eyes glow with a blood-red luster. Chi Yu had only recovered 30% of his strength when he had first flown back. However, as he flew back, his Qilin cloud power had reached the 7th cloud realm, allowing him to draw energy from the 1,000 Opportunities and 100 Changes technique. He no longer needed to worry that the 1,000 Opportunities and 100 Changes technique would consume a large amount of his energy. It could be said that as long as he did not use a special attack from the 1,000 Opportunities and 100 Changes technique, or was directly bombarded by a powerful energy, not only would the 1,000 Opportunities and 100 Changes technique not consume his energy, it would even increase his energy recovery rate. The other ability was also very practical. When the energy traction ability was activated, Chi Yu's energy could be automatically transferred in this territory. Under different conditions, the energy transfer could be chosen by the user. In other words, if Chi Yu was in the forest, he would be able to absorb a large amount of natural energy with the energy traction ability. But if he were on the surface of the sea, the energy traction ability would be water energy molecules. Hence, under the effects of these two abilities, Chi Yu adjusted his flight direction and flew at full speed. Not only did he not expend too much energy over the past few hours, but he had also completely recovered all the energy in his body. Even his mental strength had received a certain amount of rest during the flight. He was currently at the peak of the 7-cloud state, and it was precisely because of this that the Angel of Light, Raphael, felt an extreme sense of danger the moment he appeared. Chapter 200. No, Chi Yu roared. With his body as the center, the air within a 10-square-meter radius suddenly distorted. Without holding back, nature energy surged out and turned into countless green spots of light that surged into Ming Ming's body. In fact, Chi Yu had not returned too late. If he had returned a minute later, perhaps Ming Ming would have really left this world. In the face of Ming Ming's all-out attack, the Angel of Light could not hold back at all. Although his method of attacking with his own light and shadow seemed simple, it was the Angel of Light's origin attack, the divine body of light. Not only was Ming Ming's energy shattered, but all the meridians and organs in her body were also severely damaged. Her thundercloud force was completely dispersed. If not for the fact that Chi Yu had modified her body with nature energy, she would have turned into a rain of blood on the spot and been purified by the tyrannical divine energy. However, even if her body was preserved, her internal organs were greatly damaged, and her life force was fading away. This put her in an absolute crisis. As the source of nature, Chi Yu's nature energy was unparalleled in this world. He arrived in time, and without any hesitation, he forcibly transferred his nature energy to Ming Ming. Although this method consumed a lot of his own energy, at the same time, it achieved the best effect. Almost in an instant, the nature energy in Ming Ming's body resonated with the energy that Chi Yu had infused. One must know that she and Chi Yu were spiritually connected. Moreover, the nature energy in her body originated from Chi Yu. Therefore, there was no rejection for Chi Yu's energy input at all. Almost in an instant, the body of Ming Ming, who had been on the verge of death, lit up with a jade-like luster. Under the cover of the jade-like luster, Chi Yu's nature energy. With the help of Kieran's marrow washing and muscle tendon changing art, the damaged meridians and organs in Ming Ming's body had already begun to regenerate. Chi Yu, you're finally back. Save Qing. We brought trouble to them. Their target is Sister Yumo. After saying that, Ming Ming could no longer hold on. However, she did not die this time. Instead, he fell into a deep sleep in the warm energy. Even with the enormous energy of the source of nature, it would take several days for him to recover from such a severe injury, and this was not counting the recovery of the thundercloud force. Fortunately, Ming Ming had reached the 6th cloud level, which resulted in a qualitative leap in the Zodiac Guardian God Warrior, which saved her life. Rest assured and go to sleep. Leave the rest to me. As long as I'm not 4, no one can hurt Qing. Qiyu slowly stood up under the protection of his natural energy. Under the protection of his natural energy, Ming Ming's delicate body turned into a green light and merged into the Kirin Pearl. In the silver light in Qiyu's eyes, the blood-red light became stronger. He stood up, took a step, and arrived beside Klinsmann and Su Qing. At this time, Klinsmann was completely covered in blood. Looking at the dim light in his eyes, Qiyu couldn't help but feel a sharp pain in his heart. Klinsmann also saw him. Although his handsome face was covered in blood, he still smiled. He smiled faintly. "You're back. You're finally back. I can rest assured now." Qiyu squatted down and knelt on one knee in front of Klinsmann. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Klinsmann, my good brother. I brought this disaster to you. It's all because of me. Don't worry, even if I have to do my best, I will definitely save you." Klinsmann shook his head gently. "No, Qi, I understand your heart. That's enough. No one knows my body better than me. I'm different from you Easterners. Although your magical natural energy is very good, it has no effect on me. After all, I belong to the darkness. Unless the satanic demon God himself comes, no one can save my life. Have you ever seen a vampire survive after losing so much blood? No, brother, I don't want you to die. Big brother." Su Qing was sobbing uncontrollably as she looked at Klinsmann, her body trembling violently. Klinsmann's gaze turned to the people of the Vatican. "Everything is over, isn't it? Respected lords of the Vatican, can you allow me to say a few words to my beloved sister in my last moment? Even if I belong to the dark world, I still hope to have this power." Paolo Gasol sighed and said, "Why bother? Your Highness Klinsmann, you bravely protected your family. On behalf of myself, I express my sincere respect to you. Please, before your soul is purified by the heavens, we will not disturb you." Qiyu's body trembled. Just as he was about to stand up, his hand was grabbed by Klinsmann. Klinsmann shook his head at him meaningfully. "Can you let me have a moment of peace before the end of my life? Qi, your breath is very unstable. You need a rest." Although his voice had started to become weak, and the dark energy was slowly leaving his body as his blood flowed out, Klinsmann was very clear-headed at this moment. The bloody light in Qiyu's silver eyes flickered. Of course, he understood what Klinsmann meant. The battle was not over yet. Even if Klinsmann died, it would not end. Since the real target of these Vatican powerhouses was Yamu, they would not leave so easily. And right now, he was the only one who still had the ability to fight. Taking a deep breath, Qiyu forcibly dispelled the intense resentment in his heart. He activated the thundercloud force in his body. Flying for a long time had somewhat affected his body. In this silk-like silence, he began to barely recover his energy. Klinsmann turned his gaze to Su Qing. His gradually dimming eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction. "Hey, Christy, don't cry. In my heart, you will always be the most beautiful vampire. You are the princess of the Dracula family. Don't cry. I will not be able to accompany you from now on. You must learn to be strong, okay?" How could Su Qing not cry? Her tears were like a kite with a broken string, merging with Klinsmann's blood. Her heart was so sad that it almost stopped beating. "Don't cry, brother." "I won't cry. Brother, let Qiyu try. He is so powerful. He will definitely bring you back." Klinsmann shook his head gently. Actually, he knew, if Qiyu really went all out, he still had a 20% chance of surviving. However, if that was really the case, it would definitely consume a large amount of Qiyu's energy. In the end, not a single person would be able to successfully leave this place. The remaining members of the blood clan of the Dracula family would also be completely annihilated in this operation by the church. That was not what he wanted to see. As the head of the Dracula family, as a fierce and ambitious person, the moment Qiyu appeared, he had already made up his mind. Christy, listen to me. After I die, you must listen to Chi. I can see that deep in your heart, you still have a good impression of him. I also believe that he is a person worth trusting. Chi, can you promise me? From now on, protect Christy's safety forever. Don't let any harm come to her. Looking at Klinsman's bloodshot eyes that were full of hope, Chi nodded firmly without hesitation. Klinsman, I will definitely repay what I owe you. Moreover, Chinger is my friend. Klinsman smiled. Chinger, the Dracula family is finished. I've worked hard my whole life, but I couldn't bring them to the true dark stage. Although I'm not willing to accept it, I'm very satisfied now. Do you know? You have fulfilled the regret that I have been immersed in for thousands of years. Back then, when Christy died, how I wished I could be by her side. Even if I gave up everything, I still hoped to be able to exchange for her life. But I can't do it. She is already gone, forever in the arms of Satan. For thousands of years, although I have always been the head of the Dracula family, I have never been happy until you appeared. You have the same trace of willfulness as Christy. You are as beautiful as her. Even the aura that you exude is exactly the same as hers. When I first saw you, I knew that this was a chance that God gave me, a chance to make up for my regret. So, I did not hesitate to use the red gold origin blood to turn you into a vampire like me. Chinger, do you hate me? Do you hate me for turning you into Christy? No, big brother, I do not regret it. Even without the power of a vampire, I have a brother like you. I do not regret becoming a vampire. Su Qing shook her head vigorously. Tears flew everywhere as she shook her head. They fell on the ground beside her, and also on Chi Yu and Klinsman. Klinsman looked at Su Qing gently. Thank you, Chinger. Today, I've finally fulfilled my wish. Although I still have a lot of unwillingness in the depths of my heart, I've finally saved you at the last moment. Even though I've sacrificed my life, I have no regrets. I'm very satisfied. Don't be sad because of my death. Compared to ordinary people, I have lived for thousands of years. Perhaps I should have left this world long ago. Chinger, go back. Go back with Chi Yu to the place that belongs to you Easterners. There, with Chi's protection, no one can hurt you. My dream is over. Go back to your own life. You're still a young girl. You still have a long way to go. At this time, Su Qing was sobbing so much that she could not speak. Looking at Klinsman, no one noticed that Chi Yu's silver eyes had turned completely blood red. A dangerous aura was completely contained, but it gradually exploded in the depths of his heart. It was an energy wave full of murderous and demonic aura. At this time, his body had begun to tremble slightly. Chi did not say anything. He only slowly raised his head and looked into Klinsman's eyes with his completely blood-red eyes. Klinsman's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Chi, a shrill roar came out of Chi Yu's mouth. He knelt on one knee and raised his head. The long silver hair on his head was instantly dyed blood red. Incomparably surging energy instantly surged into the sky. His originally tall body began to expand rapidly. A strong fighting spirit mixed with violent, murderous aura and monstrous resentment. His body was changing. The angel of light, Raphael's pupils instantly shrank. Demonization. This human is actually demonized. Slowly turning around, Chi Yu's blood-red eyes swept across the people of the Vatican in front of him. Every expert of the Vatican could not help but take a step back when his blood-red eyes swept across them. They had never seen such intense resentment and murderous aura before. At this time, Chi Yu was like an active volcano that showed signs of erupting at any time. Murderous aura. Real murderous aura spread from Chi Yu's body. Xuanyuan's soul and Xieji's voice sounded almost at the same time in Chi Yu's heart. Stop! You will destroy yourself like this. Chi Yu turned a deaf ear to them. At this time, no one could stop the murderous aura in his heart. As the soul of the Xianyuan sword, Xuanyuan's soul was indeed very powerful. However, after all, Chi Yu was the director of the Xianyuan sword. He could disobey Chi Yu's orders, but he did not have the ability to stop Chi Yu. Demonization had raised Chi Yu's aura to its peak. With the help of the huge, murderous aura, his body had rapidly expanded. Without going through the Kirin's true form mutation, he had directly expanded to a height of about 3 meters. His bulging muscles completely tore apart the clothes on his upper body. Immediately after, lines of magic patterns began to appear on his skin. The black patterns shone with a metallic luster. The patterns were very thin, but could be seen clearly. The silver eyes of the Kirin tattoo on his chest had also turned blood red. Yes, the 4 auspicious clouds ink Kirin had turned into the unprecedented blood Kirin due to extreme sorrow and resentment. He slowly raised his hand, and a golden light suddenly lit up. Under Qi Yu's control, the Xianyuan sword appeared in his hand. However, at this time, the Xianyuan sword had changed. The sword was constantly buzzing and trembling, as if it was trying to break free from Qi Yu's hand. The Xianyuan sword was the sword of the brave and the sword of the benevolent. At this time, the strong, murderous aura emanating from Qi Yu's body had caused it to violently reject him. Qi Yu glanced at the Xianyuan sword, whose golden light was constantly weakening. He snorted angrily and kept it back into his body. His arm shook again, and a long sword that looked exactly like the Xianyuan sword appeared in his hand. However, this time, the sword was blood red. Kirin's octatic treasures was not like the Xianyuan sword, which was a divine weapon. It had its own energy aura, and after it recognized its master, it would change according to its master's aura. Under the effect of the murderous aura, Qi Yu had turned into a blood Kirin. In that case, the Kirin illusion had also turned into a blood Kirin in the hands of the blood Kirin. The tyrannical sword light flickered continuously in the air. Every time it fluctuated, it would bring about an extremely terrifying, murderous aura. The sky, which had originally been lit up by the sunlight, had now returned to darkness. A thick black fog appeared in the air, blocking the sunlight. His entire body was emitting a blood-red light. At this time, Qi Yu was completely like a demon, a real demon. In fact, with Qi Yu's mental strength, this situation should not have happened. Even in the midst of extreme sorrow, he would not produce such extreme resentment. However, he was no longer the original Qi Yu. In his heart, there was now something that even he himself did not know. Kirin slowly raised the blood sword and pointed it at the people of the Vatican. Qi Yu's voice also seemed to be filled with magic. "It's you. It's you who killed my beloved wife. It's you. You must all die. Only with your blood can I dispel the hatred in my heart. Go to hell." He held the sword with both hands. Qi Yu's body instantly rushed up. In an instant, a dark red light illuminated the earth. In just a moment, he had actually used the 1,000 transformation Jade Pearl Realm technique to envelop all the experts of the Vatican. In the next moment, his body had already appeared next to the Angel of Light, Raphael. Boom! The two majestic bodies collided in the air. The golden sword in Raphael's hand forcibly blocked Qi Yu's Kirin blood sword. The tyrannical energy waves caused everything in the surroundings to tremble. However, in the next moment, Qi Yu's body had already disappeared. Raphael spat out a mouthful of blood. The holy light on his body actually weakened a lot at this moment. He had already been injured by Ming Ming's final attack, and now he was attacked by Qi Yu's sword with all his strength. Although it was not as sharp as the Xianyuan sword, Qi Yu's energy had increased to a terrifying level after turning in a blood Kirin. It was definitely not something that the 7 Clouds Kirin should have. The two swords clashed. The first thing Raphael felt was an incomparably huge, murderous aura. It was a murderous aura that even he could not withstand. Then came the monstrous resentment. Even with his ability as the Angel of Light, he could not completely dispel the murderous aura and resentment under such an attack. He was immediately injured even more. When Kirin's blood sword appeared again, it was already in the midst of the experts of the Vatican. The 7 experts of the church were instantly cut into 14 pieces, completely sliced apart by the blood-red light of the Qilin's blood sword. The 3 archbishops in red roared angrily at the same time. An intense holy light ignited. The 3 of them combined into one, and only then did they manage to force Qi Yu back. However, even in the process of being forced back, his Kirin blood sword had already taken 3 lives. Within the infinite changes of the four stars domain, Chi was the absolute master. Even though he had lost his consciousness, he had not lost his fighting ability. Moreover, under such circumstances, his bloodthirsty heart had raised his fighting spirit to the limit. Chi body disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already behind Chi. Raphael did not even have time to react. He could only attack hastily and clash head-on with Chi again. With a loud bang, Chi body turned into a mist of blood and disappeared. At this moment, the infinite changes of the four stars domain was fully activated. All the experts of the Vatican were separated at the same time. They were horrified to find that their companion was suddenly getting further and further away from them. No matter how hard they tried, they could not get close to him. Raphael's face had already become abnormally pale. His body even began to tremble slightly. Even the golden light, sword in his hand, began to flicker with an unstable light. Fear. Fear. This archangel from the celestial realm actually felt fear in his heart. The blood-red figure began to flicker among the scattered people. Every time it flickered, it would take away a life. His attacks were extremely overbearing and tyrannical. All of his attacks were head-on slashes, and the result of every attack was an expert of the Vatican's body being split into two. Not a single person could withstand his attacks. With Kieran's blood sword and the Azura Blade's attack method, how could the ordinary people of the Vatican be a match for Blood Kieran? Even though he had lost his consciousness, Chiu's attacks were very clever. He did not attack the few red-robed archbishops or Inzaghi. Instead, he chose to attack the ordinary experts of the Vatican. In the short span of a minute after the infinite changes of the four stars domain was activated, only 5 of the 20 experts of the Vatican were left. The blood-red figure continued to flicker in this dark red world. While a massacre was taking place in the infinite changes of the four stars domain, changes were also taking place outside the domain. Although the vampires of the Dracula family were lucky enough to survive, they had all lost the ability to fight and were lying on the ground, moaning in pain. Klinsmann, whose life force was about to disappear, now looked a little ruddy. If Su Qing was still conscious, she would definitely know that Klinsmann was in a state of terminal lucidity. Qing, I'll call you Qing, After all, you're not the real Kieran. I'm going to leave, but before I leave, I have something to give you. Chiyu is indeed powerful, but I still hope that you can protect yourself. This is the last thing I can give you. Do you still remember the bottle of primordial blood that Chiyu gave me? That is the blood of the ancestor of the Dracula family, Cain Dracula. It contains the purest bloodline. Originally, I wanted to give it to you after you reached the Grand Duke realm. I also wanted to drink some myself and try to reach the Blood Emperor level in a few years, but I don't have the time anymore. Now it belongs to you. I don't need you to do anything, just live well. If you have time in the future, I hope that you can come back to London to pay your respects to me. At this point, Klinsmann's dim eyes suddenly lit up. Before Su Qing could react, he suddenly sat up, opened his arms, and pulled Su Qing into his embrace. The sudden change shocked Su Qing, who was immersed in her sorrow. But why would she struggle when Klinsmann hugged her at the end? Just as she was feeling the ice-cold body of this outsider elder brother, a sudden change occurred. Klinsmann's body suddenly exploded, turning into a mist of blood that enveloped Su Qing. His voice, which had become intermittent, became clear again. Klinsmann said solemnly, Qing, listen carefully. Now, I will transfer all my energy to you. You're my last hope. In my whole life, I have always wanted to become a super strong person, to prove that the Blood Clan is not inferior to the Dark Lich, but I have never succeeded. And you're my last hope. Accept my bloodline energy and the primordial blood of Cain's ancestor. You will definitely become the unprecedented Blood Emperor. Use your power to protect yourself. My dear sister, the glory of the Dracula family will be displayed again in you. Klinsmann's voice disappeared along with his life. A blood-red light exploded, and Su Qing found that she could no longer move. Klinsmann, who had turned into a blood-red light, was like a mist that enveloped her body. Then, her clothes disappeared, and the blood-red mist continuously entered her body through her pores. Waves of tyrannical energy came from her skin. Because she had been embraced by Klinsmann's primordial blood, she did not reject Klinsmann's energy at all. Tears were still flowing, but this time they had turned blood red. Klinsmann had given everything of himself to Su Qing, including his life and all his energy. The blood-red energy was absorbed very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Klinsmann had disappeared. However, in a sense, he was not dead. His life had completely merged with Su Qing's, and his aura had completely become a part of Su Qing's body. When all the blood-red light disappeared, a porcelain bottle floated in front of Su Qing and slowly fell into her hand. The tears had disappeared, and Su Qing's eyes had turned a special purple color. Her gaze was very calm, even a little scary. She opened the porcelain bottle in her hand and poured all the blood in it into her mouth. Then, she slowly closed her eyes. At this moment, she was not just sad. More importantly, she could not let Klinsmann's last hope be dashed. At the same time, deep in her heart, she made a decision that would never change. Silence. There was a short silence. Su Qing's body seemed to have stopped moving. The next moment, the purple-gold mist gushed out and instantly enveloped her alluring body. Chapter 201. Under the influence of the purplish-gold fog, the light instantly blossomed, and a tyrannical aura soared into the sky, adding a huge amount of dark energy to the dark clouds that Qiyu had brought. Under normal circumstances, the dark energy would only affect Qiyu's energy, but it was different now. After Qiyu had transformed into Blood Kirin, his energy had also begun to approach the dark energy due to his semi-demonized state. The sudden eruption of energy from Su Qing's body not only had no effect on him, but also had a certain supportive effect. In addition, the dark energy that had erupted from Su Qing had affected the experts of the Vatican to a certain extent, which imperceptibly increased the power of the infinitely changing Jade Pearl Realm technique. In this way, Qiyu, who was in the infinitely changing Jade Pearl Realm technique, was even more like a fish in water, and his murderous aura soared. Under the influence of the purplish-gold light, Su Qing let out a long, ear-piercing scream that seemed to destroy everything. All the glass in Dracula Castle completely shattered at this moment, and the purplish-gold light abruptly converged. No, it should be said that the light condensed toward her delicate body. From the eruption to the withdrawal, Su Qing's body had already begun to change in a short period of time. Unlike the terrifying appearance that ordinary vampires would have when they transformed, Su Qing's body had slightly swelled up in the purplish-gold blood fog, but she was not very strong. Instead, she had become much more slender than before. Her well-proportioned long legs and her skin looked even fairer. The wings that had been produced after her transformation had disappeared and were replaced by a purplish-gold cloak. The cloak was very large, and the collar directly covered her snow-white neck, while the back hem of the cloak covered her entire body. Her long black hair had turned into a deep purple, and at the same time, her eyes had also turned purple, with a dot of golden light in the center of each eye. Although they both had purple eyes, Su Qing's purple was different from Yama's purple. Yama's eyes were a clear and light purple, but Su Qing's were a deep purple, and her aura was constantly expanding. Su Qing's delicate face seemed to have undergone some changes. The originally beautiful blade at this moment had a somewhat evil luster, and her pretty face had become even more attractive. However, that terrifying murderous aura gave men a very strange feeling. At least all the vampires from the Dracula family who were present looked at Su Qing with reverence. The purplish-gold energy continued to contract, leaving a faint purplish-gold pattern on Su Qing's skin. With every movement, her body would leave a series of afterimages. Her body looked like it was no longer corporeal. Light flashed, and a purple light in the shape of a heart appeared in front of Su Qing's chest. Even the fluctuation of her heartbeat remained the same. She slowly closed her eyes and stretched out her arms in the air. Her bones crackled. No one knew how she was doing right now. After all, in the history of vampires, even Cain Dracula had not reached the level of a blood emperor. Her hands gradually turned purplish gold. That was because the purplish gold patterns gradually extended from her palms to her fingers. The light gradually solidified, and on each of Su Qing's hands, 5 purplish gold fingernails grew out. They were like cones, and they shone with an incomparably delicate light. Moreover, the patterns on them looked extremely fine. If one were to look closely, they would discover that each of her 10-foot-long fingernails had a tiny hole. These tiny holes did not affect the sharpness of the fingernails. A powerful light flashed, and Su Qing let out another scream. The vampires could not control their bodies at all, and they all knelt on the ground in worship. Their bodies were trembling slightly. The Blood Kindred's unprecedented superpowerhouse was finally born because of Klinsmann's sacrifice and Dracula's primordial blood. Su Qing's gaze seemed to solidify, and the 2 purplish gold lights stared at the dark red clouds in front of her. She did not move, and quietly felt the process of the huge, dark energy around her condensing into her body. The 2 spots of golden light in her purplish gold eyes gradually disappeared, and a water droplet-like mark appeared on her forehead. The mark was very strange. When it first appeared, it was gold, but it quickly turned purple, and then from purple to dark red. Finally, it formed a dark red mark with purple and gold curve patterns on it. The original water droplet also gradually changed from the shape of a water droplet to the shape of a crown. It looked a little strange, but it was filled with an incomparably violent energy. That was the king's energy of the Blood Kindred. Perhaps it was affected by Su Qing's energy aura. Dracula's castle suddenly began to tremble slowly. When Su Qing's body slowly turned around, a black stream of air suddenly shot up from the center of the castle. In an instant, it had already risen to the end of the sky. When it converged with the dark clouds in the sky, the black pillar of air turned blood red. With it, as the center, the surrounding dark clouds gradually turned blood red. From within the blood-red clouds, an incomparably bright blood-red light suddenly filled the sky. As the blood-red light burst forth, a golden light instantly flew in Su Qing's direction. Su Qing's body was swallowed by the blood-red light, and an evil aura instantly bloomed. When Su Qing turned around again, there were 2 identical things in her hands. The vampires crawling on the ground seemed to feel something, and at the same time, their bodies trembled as they slowly raised their heads. They could clearly see that in each of Su Qing's hands, there was a 2-foot-long fang, and her purplish gold long nails were now wrapped around the fang, as if the 2 fangs had grown from her palms. The fangs were blood red, just like rubies. They shone with a sparkling luster, and circles of blood mist constantly emitted from Su Qing's body. Her previously tyrannical aura suddenly retracted, as if she was attracted by the 2 long fangs in her hands. The body of a vampire Grand Duke suddenly trembled violently, and 2 lines of blood-red tears flowed down Elder Hua's face. Oh my God! Zodiac has finally awakened from his arrogance, and awakened when our Dracula family is about to be destroyed. This is the grace of the agricultural bank. That must be the only artifact passed down in our Dracula family since ancient times, the blood god puppet, the artifact left behind by our great ancestor Cain. This Grand Duke was right. At this moment, what Su Qing was holding in her hands was the only artifact of the Dracula family, the blood god puppet. As early as 10,000 years ago, the blood god puppet had already disappeared. Successive generations of Dracula family masters had spent a lot of time searching for its existence. The blood god puppet was a magic treasure that could increase the strength of vampires by more than 30%. With it, the status of the vampires in the Dark Parliament would be completely different. With the appearance of the Blood Emperor, Su Qing had completely become the most powerful existence in the history of vampires. Her aura had attracted the blood god puppet hidden in the Dracula castle. At the same time, because she had drunk Cain's blood, with the help of Cain's aura, the blood god puppet immediately recognized her as its master when it appeared. At this moment, Su Qing was completely different from before. Even if Klinsmann was reborn, he could only kneel in front of her. That incomparably powerful aura of the Blood Clan King was something that no vampires could resist. The experts of the Vatican did not sense the changes that had happened to Su Qing. The art of infinite changes was indeed magical. As long as one was within it, everything that happened in the outside world would be completely isolated. The art of infinite changes created a special space. Other than Qiyu himself, as long as it had not been broken, the people inside could only sense what Qiyu wanted them to see. Filled with the bloodthirsty light of demonization, the blood sword in Qiyu's hand swept past the waist of the 25th expert from the Vatican, who was dressed in white, and another body was cut in half. In less than 10 minutes, 25 experts from the Vatican had died in his hands, including many experts at the level of a bishop. However, in front of the Blood Kirin, they were not even qualified to resist. Of course, the 4 red-robed archbishops did not just stand by and watch. Other than Raphael Novaiskai, who had transformed into the Angel of Light, the other 3 red-robed archbishops were doing their best to release their holy light. However, within the art of infinite changes, not only was their holy light greatly weakened, but at the same time, Qiyu used the special ability of the Sumeru seed in the art of infinite changes to separate the 3 of them, as well as Inzaghi and Raphael, in 5 different directions. The space between them had been expanded to the maximum by Qiyu, so they could not see each other, and the holy light that they used could not be condensed at all. After reaching the 7-cloud realm, how could a single red-robed archbishop break the domain that Qiyu had displayed? Fear had already appeared in their hearts, because other than Raphael, the other 3 red-robed archbishops were trying to transform into archangels. However, they were shocked to find that they could not connect with the aura of the heavens at all, and were completely isolated in this special space. In this way, they could not transform into archangels, and could only use the powerful holy light. However, the holy light could only play a limited role in this extremely special space that was made public to the world. They could only watch helplessly as their subordinates were destroyed by Qiyu one by one, but there was nothing they could do. The blood-red figure appeared once again. This time, he appeared in the place where, other than the 4 red-robed archbishops and the presiding judge, there was the last member of the Vatican. From the graceful figure, it was obvious that it was a woman. However, at this time, Qiyu, who had transformed into Blood Kirin, no longer had any thoughts about men or women. He raised the blood sword in his hand once again, and the terrifying aura in the form of incomparably worried and sickly waved it for the 26th time. When the last expert of the Vatican was destroyed, the next to be unlucky were the top experts of the Vatican. Just as the blood sword was brandished, the woman suddenly let out a scream. Qiyu's blood sword only swung a foot before it quietly stopped in midair. His body even trembled violently, as if he had suffered a special attack. The woman in white from the Vatican trembled slightly, showing the fear in her heart. Quietly, she slowly retreated in midair. Qiyu did not remain in a daze for too long. The Blood Kirin tattoo on his chest suddenly lit up, causing him to wake up from his daze. He raised the blood sword in his hand once again. This time, the blood-red light in his eyes became even more resolute. At this time, Raphael, who had already recovered from his initial injuries, finally moved. As the Angel of Light, one of the 6 archangels, he was undoubtedly the strongest among the experts of the Vatican. Seeing that Qiyu had killed so many experts of the Vatican, he could no longer endure it. He knew that if he did not destroy the strange boundary in front of him, then everyone here would eventually become the prey of the Blood Kirin. The final result would be the same as the experts of the Vatican. Therefore, he moved. Golden flames ignited from every part of Raphael's body. The enormous flames made his pure body look even more holy. The moment the golden flames appeared, it was just as Qiyu brandished the blood sword twice. Even though his mind was no longer clear, the aura brought by the golden flames still made Qiyu suddenly match it. He wisely gave up on the prey in front of him, and with a teleportation, appeared behind Raphael. The blood-red sword light, with a long rainbow and an incomparably sharp aura, suddenly slashed towards Raphael's back. The art of 1,000 possibilities and 100 changes was Chi Yu's greatest trump card. He absolutely could not let anyone destroy it. However, Raphael was indeed worthy of being one of the 6 archangels. The skill he was using now was one of the ultimate skills of the 6 archangels. It was called sacrifice. It was to sacrifice oneself in exchange for the most powerful energy. Therefore, his body was burning. Every bit of energy in his body was burning intensely. As soon as the blood sword entered the range of the golden flames, the blade suddenly trembled violently. The blood-red resentment energy actually turned into ashes in the burning golden flames. Although Chi Yu's all-out slash had blasted Raphael's body away, it had not been able to split him in half. Raphael spat out a mouthful of golden blood and turned around in midair. He stared into Chi Yu's eyes and shouted, "Evil will never prevail over justice. Great Emperor of Heaven, please bestow upon me the greatest power to destroy the evil in front of me and let light return to the world." Raphael's body disappeared, completely engulfed by the golden flames. His proud body had already turned into an angel with 6 golden flames condensed into wings and instantly flew into the sky. The golden flames formed a dazzling shadow in the sky. In the blink of an eye, the golden angel had already disappeared in midair. The muscles on Chi Yu's face twitched a few times. The blood sword in his hand disappeared, and his hands rapidly changed various hand shapes in front of him. However, the entire Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper started to tremble at this moment. The changes in Chi Yu's hands became more and more rapid. However, the Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper was also shaking more and more violently. How could the sacrifice of an archangel bring about such a huge amount of energy? Simply put, it was just like when Chi Yu used the ultimate explosion of Kiran's arm. The energy brought about by sacrifice could be said to be several times more than what Raphael currently possessed. The 3 red-robed archbishops and Chief Judge Inzaghi were deeply shocked by the scene in front of them. As the highest echelons of the Vatican, they all understood what the Great Transformation Realm represented. When an archangel descended into this world, they did not really come. What came here was just a portion of their divine essence and a portion of their energy. It was about 1/100th of the archangel's energy. Therefore, the use of the Great Transformation Realm technique at this moment would not cause Raphael to truly die. But even so, once the Great Transformation Realm technique was used, Nose would not be able to summon Raphael for at least 100 days. This was the shortest estimate, and it could even be longer. After all, the Great Transformation Realm technique had only been used when the Vatican and the Dark Parliament fought against the Dreadlord. The violent tremble was followed by the destruction. However, no matter how magical the Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper was, it had its limits. Chi Yu had the strength of a 7 clouds. In terms of overall strength, under the circumstances that he did not use the Xianyuan sword, he was only on par with Raphael in terms of strength. It was the same when he fought against the Dreadlord. His strength was at least a notch lower than the Dreadlord's, and it was completely because after the Archangel used the Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper, Chi Yu could not stop him with his own strength. Therefore, the Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper was unsurprisingly destroyed. Su Qing floated quietly in midair, the blood god puppet in her hand flickering with a strange light. Her deep purple eyes suddenly changed, and then a ray of golden light suddenly shone from the dark red light in front of her. When this ray of golden light first appeared, it was only as thick as a finger, but once the golden light broke through the dark red light, it rapidly spread to the surroundings. She could clearly see that the dark red light, under the influence of the golden light, melted like snow. A golden figure shot into the sky. After the 6-winged seraph Raphael used the Great Transformation Realm technique of Big Dipper, he had already rushed into the sky in the blink of an eye. Even the blood clouds could not stop the golden figure, and he disappeared in an instant. With a bang, countless murderous intent and enormous energy exploded in all directions. Dozens of corpses fell from the sky, and in the blink of an eye, they had already landed heavily on the ground. The vampires, who liked the new and hated the old, were shocked to see that none of the corpses that landed on the ground were complete. They had all been chopped into two at the waist. Even the vampires, who were usually very cruel, could not help but look at each other in shock when they suddenly saw 25 corpses like this. What they saw was not only corpses, but also endless murderous intent. Floating in midair, Chi-Yu spat out a mist of blood. However, the murderous intent on his body did not decrease, but instead showed signs of increasing. The blood sword appeared in his hand once again, and a tyrannical aura surrounded his body. His cold eyes looked extremely terrifying. No one could stop all of this from happening, and no one could stop the battle from continuing. The faces of the three red-robed archbishops had become abnormally pale. In Gasol's arms, Novitsky, who had already sunk into a deep coma, was even spasming slightly. After fusing with Raphael, he could be said to have become a part of the Angel of Light's body. Raphael had used the Great Transformation Realm technique, and, at the same time, he had emptied all of his holy power, causing serious damage to his body. Therefore, not only did Novitsky lose the ability to fight, but even his life had been threatened to a certain extent. After all, he was already an old man over 70 years old, and he did not have the terrifying regenerative ability that Chi-Yu had. The three red-robed archbishops who were still conscious had very ugly expressions on their faces. It had been many years since they had felt anger in their hearts. However, seeing dozens of their subordinates die so tragically, and seeing Raphael use the Great Transformation Realm technique in close quarters, how could their hearts remain calm? The last expert of the Vatican quietly floated to the ground and slowly retreated into the distance. The battle just now had clearly left a lingering fear in her heart. If Raphael had not used the Great Transformation Realm technique in time, she might have been slashed by Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu, who had completely completed the Blood Kirin, was definitely a terrifying existence. Even if she was powerful, she would not be willing to collide with Chi-Yu at this time. That special energy was not something she could withstand. The three red-robed archbishops' gazes were all fixed on Chi-Yu. Golden light burned from their bodies almost at the same time, and a huge energy beam broke through the sky. The blood clouds in the sky could not stop the energy wave that was filled with holy aura. The huge energy completely descended at this moment, and the three red-robed archbishops were completely enraged. There was only one result of their anger. This time it was not just one archangel, but three. Just like how the Dark Council summoned the Dreadlord, the Vatican also had to pay a price to summon an archangel. However, it was different from the Dark World. What they paid was not the souls or the blood clouds, but the state of their own bodies. Every time they summoned an archangel, their own holy power would not be able to improve for at least a year, and they could only return to their original peak state. Of course, Novitsky's situation was even more serious this time. He did not know when he would be able to summon Raphael again, and he did not know when his body would recover. Under the resistance of the golden energy, Novitsky's body was sent in front of the retreating experts of the Vatican. Three golden lights shone at the same time, and the bodies of the three red-robed archbishops, led by Paolo Gasol, were completely wrapped in the golden light. Although Chi-Yu was already a little unconscious, he knew that the three red-robed archbishops were doing something that could threaten him. He rushed out almost without hesitation. He would not be able to use the shape-shifting Jade Pearl Realm technique for a period of time. However, even without teleportation, his speed was definitely the fastest among these powerhouses. His blood sword had already arrived in front of the golden light that Pau Gasol had transformed into, leaving behind a string of afterimages. The last afterimage was still where he had been floating. The blood-red sword light slashed the golden light without any fancy moves, and the surging energy aura instantly flashed. The gold and red lights collided in the air, and with a loud bang, Chi-Yu's blood-red body was sent flying. He flipped a few times in the air before stabilizing his body. His blood-red eyes revealed a trace of confusion, as he clearly did not expect his attack to turn out like this. How could the process of summoning be interrupted so easily. If that was the case, the three red-robed archbishops would not have summoned him in front of him. Whether it was the summoning of a dreadlord or an archangel, as long as the summoning started, the opponent would not be able to disrupt the summoning unless the opponent had strength that surpassed the summoners. In other words, unless Chi Yu's strength could surpass that of a true archangel in the celestial realm, this summoning could not be disrupted. Although Chi Yu was very strong now, he was still not as beautiful as an archangel who was worshipped as a god in the human world. Therefore, it was very normal for his attack to fail. Just as Chi Yu was about to rush forward again, a hand appeared on his shoulder. Just as the blood sword was about to turn around and slash out, a cold voice rang in his ear. "Let me fight with you. They're also my enemies." Slowly turning his head, Chi Yu saw Su Qing's purple eyes. His body slowed down slightly, and he slowly nodded. Taking a deep breath, Chi Yu floated in the air, absorbing large amounts of energy particles in the air. The huge amount of energy caused his killing intent to grow stronger and stronger, and black patterns had already started to appear in his blood-red eyes. His blood-red eyes were just the beginning of demonization. Once he entered the true state of demonization, he would never be able to recover. Before leaving the Dark Parliament, Lung Er had left something in his heart. Actually, Lung Er did not want to have such an impact on Chi Yu. However, Chi Yu happened to meet Ming Ming, who almost died, and Klinsmann sacrificed his life to save Su Qing. Under the intense stimulation, the darkness in his heart completely erupted. In addition, he had killed 25 people, causing the hatred in his heart and the killing intent in his body to accumulate to the peak. Therefore, the true demonization had finally begun. Once it was completed, Chi would no longer be a Zodiac guardian warrior, but a murderous demon king. No matter how strong his mental strength was, he would lose all consciousness, and only the instinct to kill remained. "Enough! Do you unshame the Xianyuan sword?" A majestic voice sounded in Chi Yu's heart. His body, which was floating in the air, suddenly trembled violently. Then, a golden light shot out from between his eyebrows and rose into the air in the blink of an eye. The whole body of the Xianyuan sword was suspended above Chi Yu's head, and the tip of the sword pointed downwards, pointing directly at the Baihui acupoint on the top of Chi Yu's head. The intense golden light was unusually sharp, and in an instant, it formed a cage-like sword light that enveloped Chi Yu's body. At this moment, a huge amount of energy bloomed completely. On the body of the Xianyuan sword, the sun, the moon, and the stars released the vital chi of heaven and earth at the same time, like circles of golden ripples, constantly attacking every cell in Chi Yu's body. At the same time, an illusory Kirin Su Liang floated out of Chi Yu's body. No, it was not Kirin, but Xie, who had been living in Chi Yu's body for more than a year. Although it was only an illusory energy shadow, Xie's eyes were so clear. When it first appeared, the huge energy light was completely released in front of Chi Yu, and the pure energy breath blocked the front of Chi Yu. The Xianyuan sword restricted Chi Yu's body, and at this time, Xie became the key to attracting the vital chi of heaven and earth. The huge shadow slowly condensed in midair, suddenly transforming into a special energy figure. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed in front of Chi Yu. The Xie's eyes revealed a deep light as it met Chi Yu's blood-red eyes. Enormous energy undulated rhythmically, each wave of energy producing a special wave effect. The Xie was known as the magical beast of the ancient beasts. Even amongst the divine beasts, it was the embodiment of justice. The Xianyuan sword's energy was exceedingly sharp, and under its guidance, it completely rushed into Chi Yu's body. The invincible Xianyuan sword smashed the murderous aura on Chi Yu's body. The huge energy breath and even the energy fluctuations produced a special effect. With a slight smile, the energy rhythmically moved in the air, and each energy breath produced a special scene in the air. Under the stimulation of the Xianyuan sword and Xie at the same time, Chi Yu's body began to tremble violently, and a bloody light continued to spread out from his body. Every time it spread out, it would immediately be smashed by the Xianyuan sword, leaving no trace at all. Chapter 202. The Xianyuan sword was still hovering above Qiyu's head. It exuded a majestic aura, suppressing Qiyu's body to the point that he could not move at all. As the most powerful offensive artifact among the 10 great ancient artifacts, he would never allow his master to become a murderous demon. Although he was also murderous, he was still a sword of justice that stood on the side of justice. Qiyu's body began to shake in the air with a muffled groan. After the blood-red light had transformed, his skin had turned pale. Although the huge murderous aura and resentment had given him great strength in a short period of time, it had also greatly affected his body. At this time, under the stimulation of the righteousness of heaven and earth, although the evil Qi had gradually subsided and the thundercloud force had regained its dominant position, his mind was gradually awakened. However, his body had suffered serious injuries, especially when Raphael used the sacrifice skill to break the 1,000 changes of the 4 stars realm technique. The injuries left behind had begun to spread in his body. As soon as he regained consciousness, everything that he had experienced just now suddenly flashed through his mind like a movie. Of course, Qiyu did not regret killing those experts of the Vatican, but he could not help but feel a flash of fear. What's wrong with me? Am I going to destroy myself? Since when did I lose control of my emotions so much? He took a deep breath. After all, he was the king of the Zodiac. With the combined efforts of the Siege and the Xianyuan sword, he immediately made the right choice. As soon as his mind cleared, he made the right decision. He released all of the blood Kirin's resentment that was still in his body. At the same time, he began to absorb a huge amount of nature energy from the forest around Dracula Castle to replenish his body. Using the source of nature as the foundation, the green specks of light could clearly be seen condensing towards Qiyu's body from all directions. The specks of green light looked extremely crystalline, and even Su Qing, who was filled with darkness energy, did not reject the pure energy of nature. I'm sorry. It's all because of me, Qiyu said to Su Qing sadly. When she saw the changes in Qiyu's body, a faint glow appeared in the depths of Su Qing's eyes. She said, "There's no need to apologize to me. Let's deal with everything in front of us first. Qiyu, from now on, my name is no longer Su Qing. Please call me Christy." At this moment, the golden radiance in midair had completely coalesced. 3 golden figures soared into the sky, and a massive pressure emerged along with the blood clouds dispersing in the golden radiance. 3 blazing angels with 6 wings on their backs appeared before Qiyu and Christy. The 6 eyes of the 3 blazing angels were shining with golden light, and they were filled with anger. It was obvious that they were enraged by Raphael's use of sacrifice. After a brief emotional fluctuation, Qiyu had completely awakened from the previous nightmare. He silently apologized to Xianyuan's sword and Siege. At this moment, there was no more time for him to adjust his body state. He slowly closed his eyes and then suddenly opened them. The blood-red radiance disappeared completely, and the domineering silver radiance reappeared. Purple, blue, red, and cyan radiance rose from behind Qiyu at the same time. Huge energy fluctuations began to emerge. Yes, the 4 auspicious clouds Ink Kirin had returned. With the nature energy, Qiyu forcibly suppressed his injuries and raised the 4 types of thundercloud force to the limit. Through Kirin's most basic energy, it began to transform rapidly. The real battle was about to begin. This might also be the last battle. It was 2 against 3, and the 3 opponents were celestial archangels. Qiyu, who had recovered his composure, was no longer surprised or happy. The blood Kirin, which was full of murderous intent and resentment, had returned to Ink Kirin. Although his body was injured, his heart had received the harshest training. At this moment, his temperament had changed slightly. The light in his eyes had become less oppressive than before, but more neutral and peaceful. Were you the ones who made Zephyr use sacrifice? The blazing angel summoned by Gasol coldly stared at Qiyu and Christy beside him as he spoke in an awe-inspiring tone. A strong murderous intent filled the air, and the surrounding air seemed to start to solidify at his voice. Chi replied indifferently, "That's right, I did it. If you want to take revenge for that Birdman, then come and find me. Could it be that only you are allowed to kill, and we're not allowed to kill that Birdman? What's so great about having 6 wings? In the end, he's just a Birdman." "Nonsense. We are angels, great archangels." "What Birdman? You have insulted the dignity of heaven. We will punish you on behalf of the Emperor Heaven." The blazing angel on the left looked at Chi Yu as if his eyes were about to spit fire. Almost in an instant, the bodies of the 3 archangels burned with golden pincers at the same time. That was a sign that they had raised their divine power to the limit. Chi Yu, who had recovered his consciousness, naturally wouldn't rush forward as fiercely as before. His heart was filled with regret. If he had been clear-headed when he had used the art of infinite changes, then he would undoubtedly have been able to bring out the characteristics of the art of infinite changes even better. Perhaps these 3 cardinals would not have had the chance to summon angels at all. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. The momentary change had caused him to lose the ability to use the great transformation of the Big Dipper realm technique. The Chilean stealth had been severely damaged by Raphael's sacrifice technique, and it needed to be nourished by the power of his origin before it could recover its original strength, just like the Chilean mirror that had been damaged by the terrifying demon king, Matawikia. After calming down, the first thing Chi Yu needed to do was to stall for time. He had already discovered from Raphael that these so-called blazing angels were actually very simple-minded. His current state wasn't the best. Su Qing had also just experienced a change in her body, and her energy was still unstable. The longer he could stall for time, the more advantageous it would be for the 2 of them. "Wait, don't attack first," Chi Yu shouted, causing the 3 archangels who were about to attack to pause. They were still self-righteous, so they naturally wouldn't attack when Chi Yu was speaking. The archangel in the middle glared at Chi Yu and said in a deep voice, "What else do you have to say?" "Chi Yu, of course there is. Since the 3 of you are powerful archangels and have 6 wings, why don't you let us know your names first? Didn't you call yourselves great? Even if you die, you should let us know who killed you." The 3 blazing angels' expressions became slightly better. The blazing angel on the left said, "It doesn't matter if we let you know. We are the most powerful heavenly god before the Emperor Heaven. I am the angel of charm, Hania." The blazing angel on the right said, "I am the angel of defense, Kamal." This was the first sentence he had said since he appeared. Just like Parker, he spoke very little. The blazing angel in the middle said proudly, "I'm the angel of law, Uriel. Your crimes are already unforgivable and must be punished by the heavens. Surrender, and I can minimize the pain you'll have to endure." After listening to the self-introductions of the 3 blazing angels, Chi Yu's heart sank slightly. He knew that this blazing angel was definitely not weaker than Raphael in terms of strength. He was still confident in winning if he fought one-on-one. After all, the blazing angel wouldn't be stronger than the Dreadlord. However, even if the blazing angel wasn't as strong as the Dreadlord, the difference wouldn't be too huge. If there were 2 blazing angels, it could be said that he had no chance at all. If he had the 1,000 transformations technique, perhaps he could still fight. But now, it seemed that it would be very difficult. He could only hope that Christie, who had obtained Klinsmann's energy, would have some amazing abilities. After fully sensing the energy situation in his body, the pure thundercloud force had returned to normal. The negative effects of the blood Kirin had completely disappeared under the simultaneous effects of the Xianyuan sword and Xieji. The feeling of rejection from the Xianyuan sword had also disappeared. Lifting his head, Chi Yu clamped the tip of the Xianyuan sword between his right index and middle fingers. With a twist of his wrist, the huge Xianyuan sword drew a circle in the air, and the huge hilt fell into Chi Yu's grasp. The Xianyuan sword's special aura entered his body, causing Chi Yu to feel a sense of comfort throughout his body. He once again felt a sense of closeness from the sword, greatly increasing his confidence. The Xianyuan sword pointed towards the sky, his gaze already starting to focus. The 3 archangels' gazes were originally focused on Chi Yu and Christie. At this moment, when Shiyu raised his hand to grasp the sword, they were instantly startled by the aura emanating from the Xianyuan sword. How could they not feel the tyrannical energy waves? They exchanged glances with each other and revealed a trace of hesitation. The Angel of Law spread his 6 wings, lifted his head, and spat out a mouthful of golden radiance into the air. As soon as the golden radiance rose into the air, it expanded into a golden light cup and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The instant the golden halo disappeared, the 3 archangels finally began their attacks. The 6 wings on their backs were fully extended, absorbing the energy particles of the light attribute from the air. 3 holy swords coalesced from golden energy appeared in their hands. The Angel of Law, Yulier, pointed his holy sword towards the horizon. After charging forward for 100 meters, he suddenly came to a stop. On the other hand, the Charm of Destiny, Hania, and the Defense Angel, Kamal, charged towards Shiyu and Christy respectively. Shiyu floated in place without moving. His gaze was completely locked on a Charm Angel Hania. Christy, on the other hand, took the initiative to attack. Her figure flashed and disappeared. A purplish golden radiance appeared behind Kamal. As soon as he flitted past, 2 crimson rays of light pierced his temple and throat. Kamal's movements were as fast as lightning. Before the 2 crimson rays of light reached him, his body had already been stimulated. Cold, evil, and darkness that was the opposite of light restrained Kamal's energy. Kamal wasn't flustered by the sudden attack. His body that was charging forward abruptly came to a complete halt. Shortly after, a ring of golden radiance mixed with milky white energy erupted from his body, forming an oval-shaped light barrier that enveloped his entire body. The holy light spiritual formation that required the 3 archbishops to work together was instantly activated by him. That's right, it was absolutely instantaneous. As the Angel of Defense, he was the strongest among the 6 archangels in terms of defense. Therefore, he was always able to react in the shortest time possible against an enemy's attack. The crimson crystal accurately hit the holy light spiritual formation. The 2 sharp points simultaneously exploded with a strong light. The blood god puppet didn't show the slightest fear in the face of the strong holy light. Instead, it produced a strong rejection. Su Qing's purple eyes lit up. At the same time, her body lit up, and a tyrannical energy filled the blood god puppet in an instant. 2 slender fangs made ear-piercing grinding sounds as they broke through the holy light's spiritual formation, which had extremely strong defensive abilities. They were already close to Defense Angel Kamar's body. Kamal wasn't the only one who didn't expect this. No one expected Christie's attack to be so tyrannical. Although the 3 archangels were summoned and had their own consciousness, they also had the memories of the 3 archbishops. In their memories, Su Qing's power wasn't enough to threaten them. Even if her body changed, she wouldn't become stronger. However, Su Qing had left a deep impression on Kamal. Kamal's reaction was still very fast. In the face of danger, his body suddenly swayed. Relying on the holy light spiritual formation's friction against the blood god puppet, its speed was greatly reduced. At the same time, a milky white gem lit up on his chest, forming a milky white circle of energy that surged in Christie's direction. Amidst the loud bang, the 2 of them separated in an instant. Christie's eyes were still as cold as ever, and the purplish golden radiance on her body became even stronger. On the other hand, Kamal looked a little embarrassed. His pure white angel robe had 2 holes, and the tip of Su Qing's blood god puppet was stained with a trace of golden blood. Kamal relied on his tyrannical energy to repel Su Qing. However, the blood god puppet's attack was too terrifying. In just an instant, it still pierced his body. A strong suction force came over. If it wasn't for Kamal's energy explosion that pushed Christie back, perhaps he would have lost a lot of blood. Once hit by the blood god puppet, no matter what kind of creature it was, its blood would immediately rush out and become the blood god puppet's food. Moreover, there was a certain energy conversion effect, allowing the blood god puppet's owner to replenish their own energy. That was to make up for it in battle. With this, the owner of the blood god puppet would become stronger and stronger. Therefore, in a battle with Christie, as long as one was hit by her body, the battle was already doomed. Fortunately, although Kamal was careless, his reaction was still very fast. That was why he didn't let his precious angel blood be sucked away by Christie. This was the first time they collided. It was the same for Chi-Yu's side. When the charm Angel Hania rushed in front of him, Chi-Yu only made a single movement: swing his sword. Slash! The huge Xianyuan sword left a golden afterimage in the air and directly slashed towards Hania. At this moment, Hania had already raised the holy sword in her hand. As both of them were about to come into contact, Hania's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. She paused for a moment and accelerated towards Chi-Yu. Don't underestimate that momentary pause, this pause. She dodged the Xianyuan sword slash, and Hania revealed a smile. Chi-Yu's attack was obviously a classic move. As one of the archangels, how could he not take advantage of such a huge flaw? However, Hania's smile didn't last for long, because he suddenly realized that even though the Xianyuan sword had slashed forward, a substantial energy had already arrived before him. However, Hania still had some wishful thinking. After all, an energy attack wasn't as powerful as a solid energy attack. As long as he could break this energy attack, there would be enough time for him to severely injure Chi-Yu. Hania was the first person to face the Xianyuan sword today. If he knew the terrifying demon king Matawikia, he definitely wouldn't have made this choice. Of course, he didn't know him, but how could he be related to the terrifying demon king Matawikia? The holy sword went up to meet the golden sword light that flickered with starlight. An ear-piercing shriek rang out from the place where the holy sword and the sword gleam collided. There was only one thought in Chi-Yu's mind. This birdman must be crazy. He still dared to look at me with disdain and collide head-on with the Xianyuan sword. He really had guts. The ear-piercing shriek made the law angel's expression change. The holy sword in his hand instantly pointed in Chi-Yu's direction. With a soft clang, the charm Angel Hania's holy sword broke into two. The golden sword gleam was already in front of him. How could Hania have imagined that the attack of the Xianyuan sword would be so overbearing? For a moment, he had already lost the opportunity to dodge. At this moment, the golden sword gleam that was charging forward suddenly stopped. The surrounding air seemed to distort as if it was caught in between. Hania took this opportunity to turn his body and dodge to the side. However, it was easier said than done to restrict the sword gleam of the Xianyuan sword with the air. The pause lasted for less than the blink of an eye. The golden sword gleam had already floated out once again. Hania groaned miserably. The 6 wings on his back had already been reduced to 5. Golden blood and pure white feathers scattered in the air. Kamar was in a better state compared to him. This 6-winged seraph had already become a 5-winged seraph. He looked like a chicken that had part of its tail cut off. Chi-Yu was not wrong to call him a birdman. Chi-Yu naturally would not let go of such an opportunity. The downward slash of a Xianyuan sword would definitely be deflected. Since the full force of the sword had already taken effect, he naturally had to follow up with another attack. As long as he could destroy an archangel, it would be hard to say who would win today's battle. The charm Angel Hania had one of his wings chopped off, and his body instantly became sluggish. Just like how blood was the source of a vampire's charm, the wings on the back of an angel were also the source of their energy. Having one of his wings chopped off was already a considerable injury to the seraph, as his energy was instantly reduced by 1/6. Coupled with the pain in his body, it was impossible for Hania to dodge Chi-Yu's attack. God said that there are laws in heaven and earth. Everything is controlled by God. A calm but strange voice rang out the moment Chi-Yu chopped off one of Hania's wings, and just as Chi-Yu swung his sword a second time, seeing that the sword was about to hit Hania, Chi-Yu suddenly felt the air around him solidify. It was an instant of solidification, and the air seemed to become solid, pressing down on his body from all directions. His lightning speed seemed to be greatly restricted in an instant. The Xianyuan sword remained in its original form, unable to rise any further. Hania had already woken up from the pain. Enduring the injuries on his body, he used holy light to prevent the blood from disappearing. In a flash, he had already retreated tens of meters away. Hania's originally gentle gaze was now filled with anger. He retreated and advanced again, golden light condensing in front of him into the same form as his own body. It was the same skill that Raphael used to injure Ming Ming, the angel's true body. Taking advantage of Qi Yu's delay, Hania disregarded his own injuries. Golden light converged towards his body from all directions, and in the blink of an eye, his body was dyed pure gold. The golden light gradually separated from his body, fusing with the same light and shadow in front of him. In an instant, it had already transformed into a lightning-fast speed and charged towards Qi Yu. "Appear!" Qi Yu bellowed. The patterns of the sun, moon, and stars on the Xianyuan sword lit up at the same time, the sharp energy condensing into a large sword light, forcibly breaking through the suppression of the angel of La Julier. Qi Yu raised the black sword and swung it horizontally. Army. Using Kirin's mantra, he instantly poured his own energy into the Xianyuan sword. Qi Yu was not Ming Ming. As Kirin, his strength was much stronger than Ming Ming's, especially after reaching the level of 7 clouds. Coupled with the Xianyuan sword in his hand, his overall strength had surpassed any fallen angel that had appeared so far. The Xianyuan sword drew a golden arc of light, slashing horizontally in the shape of a fan. Qi Yu's eyes lit up. At this moment, his right arm had turned completely golden. At the same time, the surging emotions in his eyes also calmed down, entering the state of God and sword as one. He was the sword, and the sword was him. His eternally ice-cold eyes stared deeply at the illusion of the angel in front of him. The dazzling golden light caused the 3 angels, Qi Yu and Christy, to lose their vision at the same time. An enormous energy wave formed into a huge ball of light with the center of the collision. The ball of light enveloped Qi Yu's body and charmed Angel Hania at the same time. At this moment, the two's energy auras had completely disappeared as they were enveloped by the terrifying energy. The angel of La Julier's expression changed. He didn't rush into the huge energy ball of light, but retreated quickly under the impact of the energy shockwave produced by the collision. At the same time, he made all sorts of hand gestures in front of his chest like a butterfly. He spat out a difficult language that didn't belong to any country. Golden symbols gradually appeared around his body as he changed his hand gestures. At the same time, a golden hexagram lit up under his feet. As the collision between Qi Yu and Hania created a huge energy shockwave, the battle between Christy and the energy angel Kamal came to a temporary halt. The blazing angel and the purple gold blood emperor panted violently at the same time, quickly adjusting their physical conditions. On the ground, the last Vatican expert who was lucky enough to survive looked at the battle in the sky and couldn't help but feel a strong sense of horror. Although he knew that the Zodiac Guardian warriors led by Qi Yu were extremely powerful, he didn't know that Qi Yu could actually be this powerful. However, he didn't know that Qi Yu could actually be this powerful. The 4 cardinals had summoned 4 archangels, but now that one of them had been sacrificed, the remaining 3 didn't have the slightest advantage. Even a powerhouse like Inzaghi, who was injured by Klinsmann previously, didn't have the courage to rush up and help in the battle in the sky. That's right. This battle was no longer on the same level as the battle between the Vatican and the Dracula family. The huge golden ball of light hovered in midair for a few seconds, and this was the first time the battle had come to a standstill. Be it the Law Angel, the Energy Angel, or Christy, who was glowing in a purple gold light, their eyes were completely focused on the ball of light that was flickering with surging energy. At their level, they could naturally tell that the energy contained within the seemingly small ball of light was definitely no less than a nuclear bomb. If it were to explode, even if it were in midair, the area of a few square kilometers would definitely be turned into ruins. A few seconds later, the golden ball of light did not explode. Instead, it strangely disappeared into thin air. Qi Yu and Hania's bodies once again appeared in midair, still in the same position as when they had attacked. However, a black hole with a diameter of roughly 10 centimeters had appeared between the two of them. Unexpectedly, the black hole had absorbed all of the golden light. Hania's handsome face seemed to have an additional layer of deathly gray. From the feathers on his wings to every inch of his skin, he was trembling constantly. There was no more energy condensing from the remaining 5 wings on his back. His body was on the verge of destruction. His azure eyes, which were previously shining with divine light, had now turned into a grayish white. Even maintaining his body, floating in the air, had become a difficult task. Perhaps this was the first time since the birth of the charm, Angel Hania. He had never felt this weak before. Even though this was only a clone in the human world, he was still filled with rage. But what was the use of rage in the face of absolute strength? Chi-Yu seemed to be in a much better state than Hania. At least on the surface, he didn't look much different from before. However, the radiance on the Xianyuan sword in his hand had dimmed. The sword radiance that emanated from the sword blade had vanished. His long, black hair had turned silver white and flickered in crystal-like radiance. His imposing aura fluctuated rhythmically with the undulation of his mental strength. The Xianyuan sword in his right hand pointed diagonally to the right. The golden radiance vanished, revealing the pitch-black blade. But even so, no one dared to underestimate the aura of a divine artifact. It was obvious who had won. If Chi-Yu had forced the Angel of Light Raphael to use sacrifice to defeat him, then the Angel of Charm Hania had truly been defeated by his sword. From the start to the end of the battle, only a few breaths had passed. The two of them had not launched many attacks, but it had already decided the outcome of the battle. At their level, techniques had become secondary. How to make better use of one's abilities was the most important. Chi-Yu's body swayed slightly, and his originally calm body began to change. The black Kirin armor emerged from his skin, and in the blink of an eye, it had completely enveloped his body. The Kirin armor changed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, Chi-Yu's body began to swell. If the aura that Chi-Yu exuded before was like the Kunkang mountain range, then he was like the world's highest peak, Mount Everest. The towering aura caused the silver radiance in Chi-Yu's eyes to shine brightly again. A pair of black wings made of armor appeared on his back. These black wings were covered with a layer of golden radiance. By releasing the second stage of Kirin transformation, Chi-Yu had already used all his abilities, including the golden-winged eagle's soaring 90,000 miles leap. Chapter 203. Chi-Yu snorted in disdain. Don't tell me you bastards from the heavens only know how to fight with your lives. Hania looked at him coldly. Insulting the gods will be punished severely. Chi-Yu said indifferently, but this punishment isn't something you can bring. So what if you fight with your life? Now that things have come to this, do you think I still care about anything? The Xianyuan sword lit up once again, but this time, it was at the same time as Chi-Yu's body. It was no longer the fusion of sword and god, but the unity of man and nature. The final battle between Chi-Yu and Hania was about to begin. This time, it was no longer a matter of victory or defeat, but a matter of life and death. The Angel of Law was still muttering his incantation, and the golden runes surrounding his body increased in number. At this moment, a loud roar rang out. The battle between Kamal and Christie had begun. Two blood-red rays of light circled around a golden ray. Every time the energy collided, it would spread outwards. The purplish golden light and the holy golden light were constantly expanding. As the battle continued, both sides no longer held back and displayed their true power. Man and nature unity. This was the first move of the Xianyuan 8 techniques, and it was also the move that Chi-Yu was most familiar with. Ever since he reached the 7 cloud level, it was no longer as difficult for him to use the first move. Not only could he unleash the full power of the unity of heaven and man, but at the same time, Chi-Yu's energy continued to rise. Kirin's source energy was constantly being converted by the thundercloud force into the Xianyuan sword. Every time it was condensed, the Xianyuan sword would let out a faint dragon roar. It was a sound of excitement, but also a sound of anticipation. As the most powerful offensive divine artifact, The Xianyuan sword was a battle-hungry weapon. Hania was the first to move. He burned his life force to condense the sacrifice energy. The sacrifice skill was undoubtedly Angel's Gate's strongest attack, but at the same time, it came with a huge price. Once the sacrifice skill was activated, there was no room for regret. When the energy was condensed to its peak, even if it was not released, it would still bring about destruction to oneself. At the same time, the sacrificial energy condensed would also gradually dissipate. As an archangel, Hania, of course, knew that he had to use all of his energy to attack. At this point, he could no longer care about anything else. The golden figure, or rather a ball of golden flames, carried the life of the charm angel, Hania, and raised its speed to the limit within a short distance. It had even reached the speed of light. In an instant, it had already charged towards Chi-Yu. In truth, Hania wasn't the only one who had no choice. Chi-Yu was in the same predicament. Although he was stronger than the charm angel before him, against Hania's sacrifice, all he could do was activate one with heaven and earth. Only the Xianyuan 8 laws could withstand the archangel's strongest attack at the cost of his life. The Xianyuan sword moved. Chi-Yu's body also disappeared. The huge golden sword brought with it the sun, moon, and stars. It brought with it the mountains and rivers, completely integrated into one. It was thrown towards the golden flames. At this moment, the Angel of Law Uriel's incantation was finally completed. What exactly did such a profound incantation bring? Chi-Yu had no time to think. When using one with heaven and earth, he had to completely integrate his mind with the Xianyuan sword. There was no time to think about other things. With Hania as the center, the golden runes were released into the surroundings, enveloping the entire battlefield. In an instant, it was like a gigantic cage, trapping the 3 archangels and Chi-Yu Christie within. The huge golden sword pierced through the burning holy flames, and Hania's body completely disappeared. The burning holy flames scattered in all directions and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After returning to his original body, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be surprised because the attack from Hania's sacrifice was far less powerful than he had imagined. Although the Xianyuan sword was affected to a certain extent, it wasn't as strong as Hania's previous attack. On the other hand, using one with heaven and earth consumed a lot of energy. What's going on? Could it be that the charm angel only has this much strength? Could it be that he had become weak because of the injuries he had suffered previously? No, that can't be the case. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if he's weak, he's still an archangel with 6 wings. How can the energy obtained from sacrificing his life be weak? Filled with doubts, Chi-Yu turned around gracefully in midair and gazed at the golden flames that erupted from Hania. Just as he had expected, things were not that simple. Although the ball of golden flames had been destroyed by the Xianyuan sword, it did not dissipate. Instead, it turned into specks of golden light that scattered in all directions. At this moment, the Angel of Law had completed his incantation, and the specks of golden light fused with the surrounding golden light barrier. Immediately, the golden light barrier was no longer as solid as before. Instead, it became illusory, and layers of golden mist appeared in front of Chi-Yu in a superimposed state. Christie let out a cry of surprise. There was a huge change in the previously evenly matched situation. The Angel of Energy, Kamar, was as though he had taken stimulants. The holy sword in his hand glowed brightly and struck Christie back. Although it didn't cause any damage to her body and didn't destroy the blood god puppet, the purplish gold energy around Kamar had shrunk significantly. The situation of the battle took a turn for the worse. There was a huge change in the situation. Chi-Yu panted slightly. It wasn't easy for him to defeat an archangel. Hania had vanished and his opponent had changed. The Angel of Law, Uriel, hovered before him calmly. Chi-Yu could see a trace of pride in his eyes that flickered with a golden luster. Domain. The golden radiance must be a domain. But what kind of domain is it exactly? Chi-Yu didn't feel any restrictions on his body. Even though he had consumed a lot of his energy by using the unity of heaven and man, he still had about 40% of his remaining energy. Even though he might not be able to defeat the other angel, at least he still had some strength left. But in Uriel's eyes, he seemed to see that Uriel had already revealed the attitude of a victor. And all of this must have something to do with the surrounding domain. You're very powerful. I haven't seen such a powerful being among the humans for a long time. Uriel's voice was as pleasant as ever. At this moment, the radiance in his eyes had changed a lot, and he had regained his calmness. What kind of enemy is the most terrifying? Is it anger? Is it a complete outburst? No, it's none of these. The most terrifying enemy is calmness. Only this kind of enemy, who doesn't show his emotions on his face, possesses even more terrifying power. No one wanted to feel this unfathomable feeling. Even Qiyu felt the same way. Why can't humans be powerful? Besides, do you really think I'm just a human? Qiyu retorted. He naturally hoped to stall for time. He knew that energy recovery was one of his greatest guarantees. As long as he had enough time, he could even restore his power to its peak state. As he spoke, Qiyu had already begun to use Kirin's ascending cloud technique in an attempt to condense the energy molecules in the air. However, when he began to condense the energy in the surroundings, Qiyu's heart sank. He was shocked to find that everything seemed to have turned into a vacuum. There were no energy molecules of any attribute. This was the first time Qiyu had encountered such a situation. Even in Hell City, there was dark energy for him to convert, even if it took a longer time to recover. There were side effects, but it was still much better than this situation where he couldn't absorb anything. Don't waste your energy, Julian said. It's useless. You won't be able to absorb any energy to replenish yourself in my domain. Wasting time will only worsen your injuries. I think, at this time, you should be able to focus your energy on healing, right? Can you tell me what kind of domain this is? From the looks of it, you should already have the confidence to win. Qiyu took a deep breath and tried his best to calm himself down. Although the energy in the area was like a vacuum, it strangely didn't affect breathing. Julier smiled elegantly and said, "Of course. Haven't you noticed? After the three angels appeared, neither Hania nor Kamal used their domains. Do you know why?" Qiyu looked at him strangely. "Is it because of you?" Uriel clapped his hands and said, "You're a smart man indeed." "That's right, it's because of me. Although I'm not the strongest among the 6 archangels, I'm the best at using domains. Even ahead of the archangels, the battle angel Michael can't compare to my domain. So, as long as I'm around, the other archangels won't use their domains to waste their energy. They only need to fight, and I'll use the domains they need to support them. However, I didn't expect you to be this strong. My domain is actually ineffective against you." Qiyu asked, "The domain that restricted my body?" Uriel nodded and said, "That's right. My law-directional domain is invisible and can control the enemy's body under any circumstances. If the enemy is too weak, I can even use this domain to make the enemy fight for me. Don't you think it's amazing?" Qiyu snorted. "I don't think it's amazing. I only know that in front of my Xin Yuan sword, your domain is useless." Uriel said, "Indeed. No, the sword in his hand should be a divine weapon. Its attack power is the strongest I've ever seen. It can actually use its own sharpness to forcibly destroy my domain. This is the first time I've seen such a weapon. Without it, you might not be able to defeat Hania with the help of my domain. The result is already out. What's the point of saying all this? What's your domain now? It seems like you're more confident in it than any other domain." Uriel said, "Of course, because this is my strongest domain, and it can also be said to be my life domain. As long as this domain is displayed, no one has ever been able to rush out. You won't be an exception." Qiyu smiled. "Haven't you heard that miracles are created by people? However, when you displayed this domain just now, you seem to have received help from Hania." Uriel said, "At this stage of the battle, we no longer have any contempt for you. In order to smoothly achieve the final victory, we have no choice but to make some sacrifices. In this world, we're just clones of the main body, and we only have 1/3 of our true strength. 1/3 of our strength is not enough for me to display my life domain. Therefore, I need Hania's help. Even if he doesn't use his sacrifice skill to help me, he has already lost the ability to fight in front of you. Voluntarily sacrificing yourself to help your partner. Looks like I've still underestimated you bastards. Chiyu laughed mockingly. Julier was not angered by the mockery in Chiyu's words. Instead, he calmly said, "This domain of mine is called the absolute law. In this domain, I am the master of everything. It's not something that can be changed by human consciousness. Although your divine weapon is powerful and even has a certain restraining effect on domains, it has no effect in my absolute law domain. Because what you're about to face is an irresistible force." Chiyu raised the Xianyuan sword in his hand slowly. "Let's see if your domain is stronger or if my sword is sharper." Uriel smiled faintly and said, "Then go ahead and try. Domain lock." Following his soft shout, Chiyu had already lost sight of Uriel. At this moment, Christy suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. Her body had already been encircled by a circle of golden sword radiance. Originally, she was only facing one energy angel, but now there were 3 more energy angels by her side. 4 archangels surrounded her in the middle. In just a single exchange, Christy's body had gained 3 new wounds. The radiance of the blood god puppet in her hand had clearly dimmed. What kind of strength is this? 1 into 4? Chiyu was startled. Now that Uriel had disappeared, saving Christy was naturally the top priority. Without any hesitation, he pounced toward Christy. Klinsmann had already passed away. Whether it was from Klinsmann's or Su Qing's perspective, Chiyu would not allow anyone to hurt her. The golden mist floated. As soon as Chiyu dashed out, the surroundings changed again. Christy disappeared, and so did the energy angel Kamar. In the entire space, only the golden mist existed. Chiyu's body tensed up. He suddenly realized that the golden energy had engulfed his body and he couldn't move at all. Even his right arm that was holding the Xianyuan sword was completely locked by the golden energy. When he looked at his situation, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright because he realized that he was being held in the hands of a gigantic angel. The surrounding golden energy was actually just one of its hands. And this angel was Uriel. The energy that Uriel's gigantic body emitted could no longer be described as terrifying. In his grasp, Chiyu couldn't break free even if he unleashed all his energy. The power of the domain. This was the power of his life domain. Uriel said calmly, "Stop struggling. It's useless. In my domain, I'm the most powerful ruler. I can make myself possess boundless energy, and no one can resist me." Although Chiyu was caught by him, his emotions were nostalgic, and he could remain calm. In this situation, calmness was the best choice. Looking at Uriel, he said disdainfully, "If that's the case, won't you be the leader of the archangels? Perhaps you can even become the so-called Emperor of Heaven. Since you're invincible, why are you still an ordinary archangel?" Uriel's expression changed slightly. "That's because I'm the angel of law. Before I use my domain, I'm the weakest among all the archangels. However, once my domain succeeds, I could be said to be the most powerful one. Didn't you realize that when I use my domain, I could be attacked at will? At that time, as long as anyone attacks me, my domain will be interrupted. Unfortunately, you won't have the time to do that. My domain has already been formed with Hania's help. In this situation, you no longer have any chance." Chiyu said, "In this world, nothing is absolute. I believe that no matter how powerful your domain is, it will still have flaws. For example, with your own energy, how long can you maintain this domain?" This time, Uriel's expression really changed. Just as Chiyu had said, his absolute law domain was the most powerful among all the archangels. But at the same time, this domain also consumed the most energy. Even in his perfect state, he could only maintain this domain for about 5 minutes. After coming to the human world, he only had 1/3 of his energy, which was not enough to display the absolute law domain. Therefore, he could only rely on the energy that Hania had injected into him after sacrificing her ability to complete this domain. However, he could only maintain it for 2 minutes. Chiyu's words made Uriel feel a sense of crisis. He subconsciously tightened his grip on Qi Yu, and the massive energy was clearly going to crush Qi Yu. The Xianyuan sword vanished and merged back into Qi Yu's body. Even though 2 minutes wasn't long, under his control, he could make these 2 minutes extremely long in his domain. He thought that it was enough to deal with Qi Yu and Christie. However, he had underestimated the Xianyuan sword in Qi Yu. Even though the Xianyuan sword could unleash its most powerful attack when it was in its original form, even though it had fused with Qi Yu, the sharp energy was still present. When Julier increased the force in his hand, wanting to completely destroy Qi Yu used the Xianyuan divine sword that had fused with him to make his aura incomparably sharp. He forcefully pushed the giant palm away a little, and his body rapidly spun like a giant spinning top as he rushed out of Julier's hand. Qi Yu's aura stagnated all of a sudden. Even though he broke free from Uriel's grasp, his energy had become extremely weak. He had fought 3 archangels one after another. On the other hand, it could also be said that Uriel had fused with Hania's power. In terms of overall strength, he had exceeded his peak state. Moreover, he had the insane domain of time. Even though Qi Yu broke free from Uriel's grasp, he knew that his defeat was irreversible. As expected, Uriel was startled after Qi Yu broke free from his grasp. However, he reacted immediately. The surrounding space froze instantly, and the entire space turned solid in an instant. Qi Yu couldn't break free at all. Uriel's enormous palm slammed down on Qi Yu's head without any resistance. While Qi Yu was in a crisis, Christie wasn't any better. Under the effect of the absolute law domain, the energy angel Kamal had split into 4 and each possessed 80% of the original's attack power. Although it was only for a few breaths, Christie was already resisting with all her might. However, her body was also covered in countless wounds. At this moment, 4 holy swords were pointed at 4 vital points on her body. Her blood god puppet had just been blocked by Kamar's energy and was about to be destroyed by the energy angel in front of her. She didn't even have the chance to dodge. The heavy injuries on her body and the loss of blood left her severely injured. Just as she was about to be destroyed, the space froze all of a sudden. Not only did Qi Yu freeze, but the 4 bodies of Kamal and Christie were also completely restricted. At that moment, the nearest holy sword had come into contact with Christie's skin. The purplish-golden radiance in Christie's eyes had become extremely dim. From where she stood, she could see Uriel's enormous fist smashing down on Qi Yu's body. Christie couldn't move. Kamal couldn't move either. But would Qi Yu not be able to move? Indeed, the space that suddenly turned solid restricted his movements. However, this didn't mean that he couldn't move. At least under the effect of the Xianyuan sword, this wasn't absolute. Feeling helpless, Qi Yu could only release the last of his energy. The sharp, pitch-black sword shredded the solid space around him, allowing Qi Yu to escape from Uriel's grasp. Of course, Uriel also saw the situation on Christie and Kamal's side. However, he was clear that the most important thing was to destroy this man. As long as he killed him, the heavily injured Christie wouldn't be a threat at all. Therefore, he didn't remove his control over the space. Instead, he moved his enormous body as fast as possible and launched a torrential barrage of attacks at Qi Yu. Although Qi Yu could barely move in this solid space with the help of the Xianyuan sword, his movement speed was immeasurably slower than usual. Moreover, Uriel's body was so huge that his attack range was extremely wide. There were a few times when his attacks brushed past Qi Yu's body. Feeling helpless, Qi Yu could only ignite Kiran's red. In an instant, the red radiance shone brightly and the temperature of the entire space became much hotter. With a loud boom, Qi Yu's speed was inevitably restricted when he released the Qilin Scarlet. Taking advantage of this moment, he was heavily slapped by Urier's palm. If it weren't for the sharpness of the Xianyuan sword, which allowed his body to barely traverse the space after being struck, perhaps the massive energy would have crushed his body. Moreover, the high heat produced by Kiran's red caused Uriel's palm to feel pain. Subconsciously, he felt that the strength of his attack was reduced, which allowed Qi Yu to escape from the gates of hell. But even so, Kieran's armor and Kieran's red weren't enough to offset all the attacks. Chiyu spat out blood, and his face turned pale. However, Chiyu didn't dare to stop. Even though his internal organs were burning, he didn't dare to stop at all because stopping would mean certain death. At least there would be a chance if he struggled. He could not even use the Xianyuan sword, because as long as he left the Xianyuan sword, his body would immediately lose the ability to move, and he would immediately die at Uriel's hands. The situation had completely entered the most critical juncture. Christy was gravely injured and on the verge of losing consciousness. Even if she was in her peak condition, she wouldn't be of any help to Chiyu in the absolute law of space. As long as Chiyu died, Julier would remove the restriction on space materialization, and Christy's body would definitely be pierced by the 4 holy swords. What should Chiyu do in this critical juncture? What else could he do? Chiyu didn't know either. However, he wasn't willing to be destroyed just like that. He wanted to struggle in the midst of destruction and search for any chance of survival. Forcefully pushing the last of his energy to the limit, Chiyu forcefully suppressed the injuries in his body and squeezed out the last bit of energy in his body. Raising his body's condition to the limit, he began to shuttle through the minor cultivation technique. It was impossible for him to move within a certain range. In this materialized space, he didn't have any speed to speak of. He would definitely die in Uriel's hands if he moved in a large range. Only by moving in a small range and making use of the gaps in Uriel's massive body could he barely survive. As a matter of fact, Uriel was also in great pain. He knew that if he returned to his original form, he could instantly catch up to Chiyu with his speed. However, in this absolute law of space, as long as the ability was cast, it was irreversible. This was also one of the reasons why he didn't deactivate the materialized space. As soon as he deactivated the domain, he wasn't confident of winning against the powerful and tenacious Chiyu. Even if Christy was killed, all the efforts of the archangels would be in vain once Chiyu escaped. How could he watch this situation develop? Therefore, while continuing to use energy to extend the duration of the absolute law of space, he maintained his current state and tried his best to increase his speed in the materialized space to attack Chiyu. He could tell that Chiyu was already an arrow at the end of its flight after taking a hit from him. Is death coming? Chiyu's mind went blank. He even saw the Grim Reaper summoning him. Am I going to die here, just like that? It wasn't that he was weak, but his opponent was simply too strong. After fighting the Dreadlord of Hell City and the Archangel before him, his confidence in himself was much lower than before. When Chiyu returned from the era of the ancient beasts, he was certain that there were very few people in this world who could be his match. Even Yamu, who had integrated Athena's bloodline, could only barely maintain a draw against him. However, in the 2 battles that took place after leaving Greece, Chiyu realized that he was wrong. If he really wanted to protect the East, his current strength was definitely not enough. This thought flashed in his mind and disappeared immediately. He clearly felt his body getting slower and slower. Chiyu knew that the final outcome wouldn't change even if he persisted. Even if the domain couldn't hold on any longer and disappeared, Christy would definitely die. What chance did he have against the attacks of the 2 archangels? You don't even have the confidence to win. Are you still worthy to be my master? Xuanyuan's furious voice sounded in Chiyu's mind. Chapter 204. This was the first time Chiyu called Xianyuan Hun Big Brother. Xianyuan Hun's mood eased a little after hearing his famous and somewhat relieved voice. Don't give up at any time. Even if it's a real death, you have to fight until the last moment of your life. Chiyu, let me end today's situation. However, after this, I won't be able to help you for at least 100 days. I'll go into a deep sleep if I release too much energy. If possible, bring me back to the ancient beast's era. The energy there is much purer than in your era. Only there can I recover as soon as possible. Chiyu was stunned. Big brother Xianyuan, what are you doing? Do we still have a chance? Xianyuan's sword said proudly, I'm the world's #1 offensive artifact. What chance? I don't care. However, I can tell you what a real destructive ability is. Even if I can only exert 1% of its power, you'll see the true tyrannical side of Xianyuan's sword. Before Chi, you could understand what was going on. he suddenly felt his body solidify. A golden light broke away from his body. The Xianyuan sword had abandoned Qi Yu's body, completely restricting him in this physical space. Seeing that the giant's big hand was about to hit him, Xianyuan's sword suddenly released a layer of strong golden light. Then, a layer of golden light flashed instantly, followed by a miserable groan from Uriel. His big hand was immediately bounced back. Although the huge hand contained an incomparably huge amount of energy, it was now dripping with blood. Facing the sharp edge of Xianyuan's sword, who could not be injured, Qi Yu smiled slightly, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. In the depths of his heart, he had vaguely understood what Xianyuan Han wanted to do. Xianyuan Han lit up, and the sun, moon, and stars left the sword one by one, followed by the mountains and rivers. Everything around it seemed to have no effect on it. As soon as these 8 natural phenomena appeared, they dispersed into the surroundings, and the physical space did not have any effect on them. The Xianyuan sword let out a clear buzz, and the dragon-like sound caused the entire absolute law field to tremble. The huge sword began to change. Before Uriel could attack Qi Su again, a circle of hundreds of Xianyuan swords appeared around him. Every Xianyuan sword looked real, and in an instant, they completely enveloped Qi Yu. At this moment, the space that was enveloped by the absolute law field lit up, and it was as if they had arrived at another world. The originally golden space had a natural scene. The sun, moon, and spots of starlight appeared in midair at the same time. There was no strong energy wave, and the mountains and rivers surrounded them. The world began to distort, and the countless golden Xianyuan swords spread out in the blink of an eye. When the distance between them increased, these golden sword lights began to expand, and the originally 2-meter-long Xianyuan swords had become 10-meter-long giant swords. It was just like when Qi Yu performed the unity of heaven and man. Even the tyrannical aura was exactly the same. There were hundreds of Xianyuan swords. There were also hundreds of unity of heaven and man. Qi Yu was very clear about the power of the unity of heaven and man. Although he had already guessed what the Xianyuan sword was going to do, he could not help but tremble violently when he saw such a shocking scene in front of him. Yes, this was the true power of the Xianyuan sword. This was the true number 1 offensive artifact in the world. This tyrannical aura was what the Xianyuan sword should have, and not everything that it had originally displayed. A huge light flashed in the air, and the light in Uriel's eyes had completely turned into horror. He had tried his best to raise the power of his domain to the limit, but the sword lights were not affected by him at all. They were still moving rhythmically on their own. He could not even feel what his extremely powerful domain could do. A huge golden light suddenly lit up in the center of all the Xianyuan swords. At that moment, a 100-meter-long Xianyuan sword appeared on the ground in the air, and this huge Xianyuan sword was deeply inserted into the ground. At the same time, all the Xianyuan swords were in the same situation. In an instant, the mountains, rivers, sun, moon, and stars were filled with powerful golden light. With the Xianyuan sword as the center, the formation of laws shall become the formation of gods. Feel its destructive power. Xianyuan Han's cold voice rang out. Even Qi Yu didn't know if Xianyuan Han's words were meant for him or Uriel. At this moment, Uriel finally reacted to the drastic change in front of him. In his opinion, all of this was caused by Qi Yu. Of course, he did not know how Qi Yu did it, but he was already filled with panic. Perhaps it was because he was escaping subconsciously, but he did not attack the Xianyuan sword. His huge body suddenly flew up, and a super holy sword that was dozens of meters long appeared in his hand. He directly slashed in the direction of Qi Yu. Qi Yu is right. You guys with wings are a bunch of birdmen. In front of the God Annihilation formation, aren't you just waiting to die? Xuan Yuan's voice was filled with uncertainty, and it was accompanied by the buzzing sound of the many Xianyuan swords at the same time. Countless 10-meter-long Xianyuan swords moved at the same time. It was not the main Xianyuan sword that was inserted into the ground that moved, but the Xianyuan sword light that was split from the main body. However, even the sword light was in the same shape as the Xianyuan sword. Even if there was only one 10-meter-long sword, it was already shocking enough. Once there were hundreds or thousands of them, the effect would be to cover the sky. Everything in front of Uriel had turned completely golden. An extremely overbearing energy with countless sharpness appeared around him from every angle in the air. He did not even have the chance to use the sacrifice skill. The huge swords had already swept past him. Uriel's body froze in midair. There was no indignation in his eyes, only fear. Instant kill. Yes, that was an absolute instant kill. That was the angel of law, Uriel, who was in the absolute law domain. Even if the other 5 archangels were here at the same time, they would definitely not be able to do the same thing. However, the Xianyuan sword had done it. In the God Annihilation formation, even gods would be destroyed, let alone an angel like him who was not a true god. The sound of glass shattering could be heard from all directions, and cracks gradually appeared on the absolute law domain. Soon after, when the cracks spread to every corner at an alarming speed, a crisp explosion sounded. Uriel's body, along with his domain, had been completely disintegrated into a molecular state. Not even a trace of energy was left. Uriel had never imagined that he would encounter such a devastating blow when he descended to the human world. Not only was his clone in the human world completely destroyed, but even his divine sense had been minced into pieces by the God Annihilation formation. Compared to the angel of flame Raphael and the destiny of charm Hania, who had used the sacrifice skill, he had undoubtedly suffered the most damage. A third of his divine sense had been destroyed, and it was not something that could be recovered in a short period of time. It was also not something that Uriel could recover on his own. Paul Gasol, who had transformed into Ulier, was now completely unconscious. He had not died. As the strongest among the red-clothed archbishops, even if Ulier had been killed, he was still the one who had summoned him. However, in the face of the God Annihilation formation, even he, who was outside, was greatly affected. Along with the other 2 red-cloaked archbishops, he lay in the forest a few miles away from the center and entered a deep coma. He fell into a deep coma. Of course, in the next moment, the 3 cardinals became 4. The radiance of the God Annihilation formation did not disappear because of Uriel's death. Instead, it became even stronger. That huge sword ray floated out like flowing mercury. In the face of the God Annihilation formation that was filled with the aura of a ruler, even the energy angel, who had regained his mobility, did not dare to move at all. He actually raised his energy to the limit as though he was committing suicide. Yes, he chose to self-destruct. However, Energy Angel Kamar's self-destruction did not produce any strong effects. It did not even hurt Christie, who was right next to him. Xianyuan, Sword God, appeared in every corner of his self-destruction range. The sharp energy completely minced the surging holy power produced by his self-destruction, leaving not even a trace. In fact, Energy Angel Kamar did not do this because he was scared silly. On the contrary, he was very smart. The aura that Uriel had expressed at the moment of his death had told him many things. In order not to have his divine sense destroyed like the Law Angel, he chose to do this. He didn't even think about whether he could destroy her or not. Angels were selfish too. Protecting oneself was the most important thing. Therefore, even though the energy from his self-destruction didn't produce any effects, he managed to escape the Xianyuan Sword God's encirclement. Christie let out a groan. Even though she wasn't attacked, the terrifying aura emitted by Xianyuan Sword God made her feel terrible. Moreover, she had suffered severe injuries. Even though the Xianyuan Sword God had no intention of hurting her, the sorrow she felt for Klinsmann's death erupted in the face of the powerful aura of Xianyuan Sword God. Her consciousness had left her body, but she still held the blood god puppet firmly with a stubborn smile on her face. The golden light didn't stop. Xianyuan Hun didn't care who you were. The unlucky chief judge, Inza, was still staring at everything in front of him. His body was swallowed up by the Xianyuan swords that poured down like a river. Not even a drop of blood was left. He disappeared from the world in the incomparably sharp light. Soon after, The last target of the god-killing formation was the last expert of the Vatican on the ground. The golden sword light had already filled the space between heaven and earth. Behind the veil, the expert of the Vatican in white revealed an intense fear of death in his eyes. "Don't!" Chi shouted. In fact, even he didn't know why he stopped the Xianyuan sword god's final attack. He just subconsciously felt that the person shouldn't have died. Or perhaps he felt that there was a faint sense of familiarity in that person's aura. This feeling came from the scream she had screamed at herself. It had appeared when she was under the influence of the demonification. The golden Xianyuan sword almost brushed past the expert's head. She was only a hair's breadth away from death. The golden radiance of the sword condensed into one in the air and condensed towards the huge Xianyuan sword. When all the swords merged into one, the huge Xianyuan sword descended from the sky and pierced through Chiyu's head, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Everything was over, and everything returned to normal. Chiyu used his last bit of energy to barely catch Christie's body and landed on the ground. When he landed on the ground, he couldn't help but stagger. He couldn't even control his body with the remaining energy, and he fell to the ground. Christie also slid down from his side. She was still unconscious. The energy particles in the air fluctuated violently for a while before slowly dissipating. If it weren't for the corpses of the experts on the ground, it would have been as if the battle had never happened. The wind blew, and the forest next to it moved rhythmically. The Dracula castle stood there quietly. The experts of the Dracula family had only recovered from the devastating scene just now. However, none of them dared to approach Chiyu. The huge Xianyuan sword had left an indelible mark in their hearts. Why? Why didn't you kill me? The last expert of the Vatican asked Chiyu agitatedly. She actually spoke in the language of Yanhuang. Chiyu's gaze wavered slightly. Because you're not filial, right? The other party was silent for a while. Her eyes flickered slightly. Perhaps. However, if you knew that all of this happened because of me, would you still choose not to kill me? Her voice was very pleasant, but her emotions were obviously very intense. Chiyu looked at her calmly. I don't know, but if that's the case, I might change my choice. The woman from the Vatican laughed wildly. You're really powerful. You actually defeated the 4 cardinal of the Vatican. You almost single-handedly turned the tide. I don't understand how you did it, but I'm almost sure that even if the Pope was here, he might not be able to defeat you in your best state. However, it's not over yet. Hand over Yamu, and I can let you go. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Chiyu snorted and hugged Christie tightly in his arms. Regret? There's no such word in my dictionary. If you have the ability, come and kill me. However, I have to remind you that you'll be the first to die. The woman from the Vatican was silent for a while. She lifted her foot as if she wanted to walk towards Chiyu. However, after hesitating for a while, she put her foot down again. She seemed very hesitant. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chiyu began to crazily absorb the energy molecules in the air. He would not count on the Dracula family at all. Those people might not be able to pose a threat to the woman from the Vatican. He could only rely on his own strength. This was what Chiyu had always known. The woman smiled. I won't take the risk because I don't need to. However, you'd better make the right choice immediately. Otherwise, it's impossible for me to let you live even if I want to. Chiyu slowly raised his right arm. There's Kirin in the east. Kirin has arms that can break the sky. If you want to try, I can show you what Kirin's real strength is. The woman shook her head and said, I don't want to try, and I'm not confident that I can resist it. However, I can't, but it doesn't mean that others can't. That's right. I said that even the Pope might not be able to defeat you in your best state. However, in your current state, I'm afraid that the only thing you can rely on is that ultimate Kirin arm. Chiyu's heart skipped a beat. You know about the ultimate Kirin arm too? Who are you? The woman's voice suddenly became a little urgent. Quick, hand over Yamu and leave this place. Otherwise, it'll be too late. Seeing that you let me go just now, I don't want you to die. Chiyu shook his head firmly. I promised Yamu that I would protect her safety. Do you think I'll go back on my promise because of my own safety? What's more, I really can't see how you can dominate my ultimate Qilin arm. The woman's breathing became even more urgent. "Fool, you fool! Can't you see?" As soon as she said that, a vigorous voice sounded. Although the voice sounded very old, it was unusually deep, and the voice came from all directions. "No one can leave this place. God said that destruction will be punished by the think tank. Your Excellency from the East, you will receive the most severe punishment." Chiyu's expression changed. "You finally know what this woman in front of you is relying on." This sudden voice also brought with it an extremely strong and powerful pressure. "Who can bring me so much pressure?" From his voice, Chiyu could roughly guess who it was. "Only he could make me lose the desire to resist." "Pope." These two words came out of Chiyu's mouth with some difficulty. His expression had already become a little bitter. He even wondered if his luck was too good. In one day, he had actually faced the top experts of the Vatican. With the Pope's status, perhaps even the presidents of the various countries might not be able to meet him. That terrifying pressure, the way that the Pope spoke, made him believe that his judgment was correct. However, he really did not want to believe it. Yes, it was the Pope. He was wearing a white robe with a polygonal front. The crown of the church shone with a treasure light, and he held a long-handled scepter in his hand. The jewels on the scepter released a dazzling brilliance under the sunlight. It turned out that when the woman discovered that the three archangels seemed to be unable to defeat Chiyu, she had already sent a distress signal to the Pope. This time, in order to find Athena, the Pope knew that this was an important matter, so he came personally. However, there was obviously no need for him to deal with the Dracula family. Hence, as the Pope, he only stayed in St. Paolo's Cathedral and asked the four red-robed archbishops to come with him while he waited for news. It could be said that the Vatican was in the midst of a storm by robbing and killing Athena. If they succeeded, the mysterious woman's promise to the Vatican would be greatly beneficial to the Vatican's future development in the West. However, at the same time, if this operation failed and the Greek side launched a counterattack against the Vatican in the West, the damage to the Vatican, especially its reputation, would be immeasurable. Hence, in order to ensure the success of this operation, the Pope personally came to London. When he sensed the first archangel being summoned in St. Paolo's Cathedral, he was already filled with shock. He did not expect a dark creature like the Dracula family to be able to approach the four red-robed archbishops and summon an archangel. The subsequent battle caused the energy waves in the air to become too complicated. Even the Pope could not clearly sense what was happening here. However, just when he thought that the battle was about to end, the other three archangels were summoned at the same time. This caused the calm Pope to instantly become nervous. He could not help but wonder what kind of enemy could make the four red-robed archbishops go all out. Even the Pope himself could not pose such a threat to the four red-robed archbishops. The Pope did not have to wait for long before the mysterious woman called him. She contacted the Pope through a satellite phone and briefly informed him of the situation. After hearing this news, even the calm Pope could not sit still and immediately rushed over. Coincidentally, after Chiyu destroyed the four archangels, he was heavily injured and had lost more than 95% of his combat power. Without the Xianyuan sword, Xuanyuan's soul had already entered a deep sleep after the god execution formation was cast. Hence, Chiyu could not summon the four swords of Xianyuan to fight. Even if he could still summon the Xianyuan sword, what else could he do with the depleted energy in his body? The Pope's appearance caused Chiyu and Christie, who had already escaped danger, to once again fall into the abyss. Looking at the calm expression on the Pope's face and the sparkling divine light in his eyes, Chiyu's changed expression gradually relaxed. He slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he had completely forgotten about everything else. He was just thinking about whether or not he would be able to cause any harm to the Pope. "Your Excellency, Pope Marty." The mysterious woman walked to the Pope's side. The Pope glanced at her, anger flashing in his eyes. "My dear lady, you have never told me that the Vatican is facing such a powerful enemy. If I'm not mistaken in my hunt, if this operation fails, I'll be the one to kill him. In that case, the Vatican has not only offended the Greek gods, but also the mysterious and powerful Eastern Guardian." The mysterious woman's breath stagnated. "I'm sorry, Your Excellency Pope. I didn't make it clear before. This time, The one protecting Yamu is the Zodiac king from the east. This is my oversight, Pope Marty said calmly. Is it really just an oversight? The mysterious woman sighed and said, I'm sorry. I'm willing to apologize to the Vatican and Piao for this matter, because I didn't expect the Zodiac King's strength to be so powerful. I also didn't expect him to obtain the legendary Eastern divine weapon, the Xianyuan sword. That's why this situation has happened. However, this also has something to do with the cardinals underestimating the enemy. If they had used their strongest power from the start, we might have succeeded by now. Isn't that right? The Pope glanced at the mysterious woman. Now is not the time to discuss this. Let's solve this matter first. After all, we have paid such a huge price. This operation must succeed. He slowly raised his hand. The Pope's gaze had already fallen on Chiyu. At this time, Chiyu was desperately condensing his energy. He had no hope of survival. However, at this time, he had already begun to mobilize the power of the ultimate Kirin's arm. Even if he died, he had to create a chance for Yamu to survive. Chiyu don't. A somewhat weak voice came from the bottom of his heart. The voice came from the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena, who had been in a deep sleep. Yamu, you're awake, Chiyu said excitedly. Have you completely fused with a divine weapon? This guy in front of me is also the Vatican's Pope. Yamu said, the fusion is not complete. Chiyu, I saw everything that happened outside. You have suffered because of me. I'm sorry. Chiyu's heart sank when he heard her words. He smiled bitterly and said, now is not the time to apologize. Let's deal with everything in front of us first. I won't hide it from you. Right now, the only attack I can use is the ultimate Qilin arm. Later, when the Pope attacks, I will immediately put Christie into the Kirin bead and activate the Kirin's arm, don't worry. Without the Kirin's bloodline, even the most powerful person in this world cannot open the Kirin bead. When that time comes, I will try to throw the Kirin's pearl as far away as possible. I think after you finish fusing with the divine weapon, you will be able to come out by yourself. At that time, bring the Emperor Heart, Snow, Lotus King, and Christie out. Help me send them to the east, to the Dragon Field Courtyard in the capital. Chiyu, Yamu's voice was choked. The aura she emitted from the Kirin bead was filled with endless sorrow. Chiyu smiled indifferently. Everyone has to die. I just didn't think that I would die in the hands of a foreign country. Yamu, this is my last request to you. Even if they kill me, I have still completed the task of protecting you. Can you agree to my request? No, I won't agree, Yamu suddenly said emotionally. Chiyu was stunned to feel the strong fluctuation of her aura. Ever since he met Yamu, it was the first time he saw her so emotional. Yamu, what's wrong? Don't tell me you're not even willing to help me fulfill my last wish. I'm almost 80% sure that they won't be able to find you. As long as you can fuse with the divine weapon, you will definitely be able to take revenge in the future, Chiyu said anxiously. The Pope had already begun to gather energy. The Supreme Pontiff was, after all, the most powerful existence in the Vatican. As he raised his scepter, an enormous cloud of saint energy appeared in the air. His eyes flickered with a powerful divine light. He had already decided to destroy Chiyu. Wait! The mysterious woman suddenly stopped the Pope and said to Marty in a firm tone, you can't kill him. The Pope's pupils contracted slightly. He glanced at the corpses of the Vatican's experts on the ground. Didn't you see the sacrifice of these children of the Vatican? They gave up their precious lives for the Vatican and fought against God. They must receive the most severe punishment. You have to understand that those who were sacrificed today are the most outstanding talents of the Vatican. Even the 4 red-robed archbishops are unconscious. The Vatican has paid such a huge price. Are you going to go back on your word? The mysterious woman's eyes flashed. She hesitated and shook her head. No, of course not. Why would I change my mind? Your Highness, we haven't found Yamu yet. I'm afraid only this person knows where Yamu is. So, you can't kill him. The Pope furrowed his brows. Even so, I must capture him and make him lose all ability to resist. The mysterious woman sighed. However, she no longer had any reason to stop the Pope. She could not help but blame Chiyu. That idiot. Why didn't he do it just now? Now, even her last chance was gone. She knew that she could not stop Malti, and could only silently stand to the side. The saint energy in the air condensed once more, and the immense pressure made it difficult for Chi-Yu, who was on the ground, to breathe. Chi-Hsien, no. I can't let you sacrifice yourself for me anymore. I have a way that might help us get through this crisis, Yama said to Chi-Yu anxiously. However, the strong sadness in her voice made Chi-Yu feel very depressed. A way? What else do you have now? Chi-Yu asked doubtfully. Yama said yes. There's a way that can help us get out of this crisis. As long as I can forcefully merge with Athena's artifact, I have the confidence to resist the Pope. However, I need your help. If you forcefully end it, will it affect your body? Chi-Yu asked worriedly. Chapter 205. Chi-Yu thought about it carefully and decided to agree with Yamo. After all, who would be willing to die if they could? Moreover, he still had many things to do in Yanhuang. The Zodiac Guardian warriors still needed his leadership. Since he had decided, he immediately said resolutely, "How do you need me to help you? Tell me." Yamu said, "These days I can feel your aura in the Kirin bead. The natural energy in your body is of great help to me. Now, as long as you transfer this natural energy to me without reservation, I have the confidence to forcefully end the battle with the Athena divine treasure." Chi-Yu was stunned for a moment and said, "It's not a problem to transfer the natural energy to you, but it takes time. Will the Pope wait for the energy transfer between us to complete?" Yama's tone relaxed a little, but her voice became much weaker. "They're here. Guardian Athena's Zodiac Guardians are here. I hope they can hold on for long enough." As soon as Yamu finished speaking, 6 rays of golden light shot from afar and collided with the ray of holy light that the Pope had just released. That ray of holy light was originally meant to grab Chi-Yu. Therefore, the intensity of the energy was not great. In the sudden collision, the 6 rays of golden light had the upper hand. Although the Pope activated his holy power in time, he still took a step back. Suddenly, 6 figures followed behind the 6 rays of golden light, and suddenly appeared in front of Chi-Yu. They were the 6 Zodiac Guardians led by Mephisto of the Libra constellation. Their timely arrival immediately brought a glimmer of hope to Chi-Yu. "Mr. Chi, you leave first. We'll hold them here. Where's the young miss?" Mephisto said without turning his head. Facing the Pope, even though there were 6 of them, they did not dare to let their guard down. Chi-Yu's eyes flashed, and he said, "You guys block him. Give me some time. Your young miss will be here soon. At that time, she will bring Athena divine treasure." In order not to let the Pope hear, he used some energy that he had painstakingly condensed to restrict his voice to only Mephisto's ears. Without hesitation, Mephisto led the other 5 Zodiac Guardians towards the Pope. He said in a low voice, "Pope, are you going to make an enemy out of us Greek Guardians? Your action amounts to a declaration of war against Greece, and I hope you will give us a more satisfactory explanation." Before the Pope could speak, the mysterious woman said in disdain, "Power is the way to explain everything. Sir Marty, it has already happened. Kill them. Otherwise, as long as one of them leaves this place alive, you know the consequences." Hearing her words, Marty's gaze wavered slightly. The scepter in his hand slowly lit up. "It's an honor to meet so many Zodiac Guardians from Greece. The Vatican has not been in contact with Greece for a long time. Let me see how powerful the Zodiac Guardians under Goddess Athena are." Mephisto and the other 5 Zodiac Guardians' faces turned solemn. They did not speak again, but raised their right hands. Because they came in a hurry, they did not bring the box that belonged to their Zodiac Guardian. Without the Zodiac Guardian equipment, they could not unleash their full strength. Even if they brought their own Zodiac Guardian equipment, could they defeat the Pope? At this moment, Chi-Yu had already started to transfer energy to Yamu without holding back. This was to allow Yamu to fuse with the divine weapon as soon as possible. Chi-Yu opened up his body and mind at the same time. At this moment, he could no longer hide anything from Yamu. The green nature energy even gave up on healing himself. Like a broken dam, it poured into the poisonous Kirin's pearl. With the guidance of his spiritual force, he successfully found Yamu, who was inside the Kirin's pearl. The nature energy directly enveloped her body. The battle had already begun. Rays of holy light continuously shot out from the scepter in the Pope's hand. Each ray of holy light contained strong energy waves. Mephisto and the other 5 Zodiac Guardians each displayed their own powerful abilities and began a battle of life and death with the Pope. They did not dare to hold back at all. Every attack was an all-out attack. The Pope stood at the same place. His holy power seemed to be boundless. No matter how the 6 Zodiac Guardians attacked, a ray of holy light met them and easily dissolved the energy of their attacks. On the surface, the Pope did not seem to be threatened at all. The mysterious woman watched the battle quietly. When she saw that the Kirin's pearl in front of Chiyu's face had turned dark green, her expression suddenly changed. She said anxiously, "Your Holiness, hurry up and defeat these Zodiac Guardians. I'm afraid that person is communicating with Yamu. I can already feel Athena's aura. If Yamu really fuses with the divine weapon, then everything will become irreversible." A strange light flashed in Pope Marty's eyes. He slowly nodded. However, he still did not move. The holy light in his hand continued to be emitted at a higher frequency than before. This was because the 6 Zodiac Guardians, led by Mephisto, were attacking at a much faster frequency than before. They had reached the limit of what they could bear. "Your Holiness, hurry up, otherwise it will be too late." The mysterious woman suddenly felt that an inexplicable crisis was approaching. She shouted impatiently. Pope Marty frowned and said, "Miss, you have to understand that the ones fighting me are the 6 Zodiac Guardians from Greece. Can't you see that they are attacking with all their strength? Under such an attack, how could I defeat them so easily? Although I'm God's spokesperson in the world, I'm not God." The mysterious woman felt that something was wrong. However, she did not know why. She coldly snorted and raised her right hand. A ray of blue light shot into the sky. She said indifferently, "It seems that at the last moment, I can only rely on my own strength." The blue light pierced through the air and condensed into a blue ball of light in the air. When the ball of light rose to the highest point, layers of blue halos peeled off from the outer layer like braids and then scattered in all directions. Although it was daytime, the blue light blossoming in the air was extremely obvious. Chiyu continued to gather his nature energy into the Kirin's pearl. He could clearly feel a suction force coming from the Kirin's pearl. No matter how strong his transfer strength was, the suction force from his breast was perfectly absorbed. He was already injured, and there was not much energy left in his body. In addition to the rapid release of nature energy, no matter how strong Chiyu's mental strength was, he could not help but feel waves of weakness constantly attacking his brain. The battle between Pope Marty and the 6 Zodiac Guardians had already begun to blur in front of his eyes. There was even a situation where there were 2 of them. As the source of nature, he could be said to have the ability to be the closest to nature. However, no matter what kind of energy humans possessed, there was still a limit to it. Chi was no exception. The natural energy existed in his body in a special form. It did not conflict with the thundercloud force. Instead, it condensed and compressed the thundercloud force. Otherwise, Chi wouldn't have been able to fight the 4 archangels with his 7 cloud power. Nature energy could be said to be the purest and most peaceful energy, and anyone could absorb it. At this moment, as the nature energy continued to flow out, Chi had a strange feeling. It was as if the Kirin bead was giving off a strange aura. There was a spiritual force guiding it into his body through the natural energy that he was injecting. He had formed a special connection with his body of the source of nature. However, he was unable to detect what this communication was in his current condition. However, he wasn't worried. In his mind, at least Yamu was his fiancée. In the face of danger, he chose to believe in his future wife. The blue flower in the sky gradually disappeared. 5 long whistles resounded in the air. Mephistopheles, the Libra constellation guardian, who was in the middle of battle, had a huge change in his expression. When his hand slowed down, he was almost hit by the holy light that the Pope had released. Hearing these 5 long whistles, the Pope couldn't help but be stunned. He looked to the side and glanced at the mysterious woman not far away. He frowned and slowed down his attacks, as if he was waiting for something. As the 5 long whistles became clearer, 5 figures appeared in front of everyone. As they got closer, the 5 figures were completely presented in front of everyone. The 6 constellation guardians' faces changed at the same time. They saw their own compatriots, and at the same time, they were the other 5 constellation guardians. The one flying at the front was the Scorpio constellation guardian Soso. Today, she was still wearing the skin-tight leather suit that completely revealed her figure. More than 70% of her skin was exposed. However, the seductive feeling in her eyes had completely disappeared. A strong killing intent and an unusual excitement were mixed on her beautiful face. Following closely behind Suso on both sides were the Aries constellation guardian Uranus, the Taurus constellation guardian Hydron, the Cancer constellation guardian Scythe, and the Virgo constellation guardian Geminis. The appearance of the other 5 constellation guardians at the same time was so sudden that the original 6 constellation guardians' faces completely changed. Mephistopheles shouted sternly, "Who allowed you to give up guarding the Parthian family's temple and come here? Don't you know that doing so is equivalent to betraying the goddess?" The Pope clasped his hands in front of his chest, and a circular arc of light suddenly shot out, causing the constellation guardians led by Mephistopheles to retreat. He also floated back and came to the mysterious woman's side, looking at Soso and the other 4 constellation guardians. Soso was clearly in front of the 5 who came later, and her eyes revealed a trace of coldness. "Why? Only you can come here. Why can't I?" "Mephistopheles, don't think that you can restrict the rest of us just because you're close to the lady. Don't forget, each of us is one of the constellation guardians. Everyone's status is equal. What authority do you have to order us?" Mephistopheles' originally calm gaze had now become fierce. "That's right. I indeed don't have the authority to order everyone. But don't forget, what should we, the constellation guardians, do? We only have one true mission, and that is to protect the goddess Athena. You left Parthenon without permission, and left the goddess palace without permission. You have already betrayed the goddess." Soso laughed coldly. "Is that really the case?" "That's right, we constellation guardians are indeed the most loyal protectors of the goddess Athena, but we should be protecting the true goddess Athena, not others." Mephistopheles' expression changed, and Ilias couldn't help but ask, "Soso, what do you mean?" Soso replied coldly, "Don't you understand what I mean? I only have one question, Mephistopheles. Is Yamu really our goddess Athena? I'm afraid she wasn't like this when she was born. You have kept this secret for so many years. Shouldn't you let everyone know the truth?" Hearing Soso's words, Mephistopheles didn't get angry. He looked deeply at Soso and instead laughed. That calm smile made Soso's heart turn cold. "Mephistopheles, what are you laughing at?" Mephistopheles said indifferently, "Everything that the lady was worried about has finally happened. Do you think that saying this will change everyone's loyalty to the lady? I've already told the truth to Ilias and the others. You don't have to waste your time. No matter what happened in the past, the lady now has already inherited the divinity of the goddess Athena. What's the point of trying to sow discord?" Soso's gaze flickered. "Mephistopheles, you already knew that we—" Mephistopheles snorted and looked at the mysterious woman beside the Pope. "Gemini, all of this was planned by you, right? You have probably planned for many years for this day. However, would all of this really be of any use? If it wasn't because I couldn't bear to see you, you would have already left this world. Since everyone is here, why do you still need to hide?" The mysterious woman glanced at the Pope and slowly walked forward. She still didn't remove the veil on her face. Looks like this was all part of Yama's plan. But do you think you have the power to resist now? Even without His Highness the Pope's help? Do you think you can beat us 6 against 6? As she spoke, she pointed at the boxes behind Soso and the others. Mephistopheles' expression changed slightly. "You still don't want to give up? Gemini, do you really want Greece to have an internal strife? We, the 12 constellation guardians, were born for the goddess Athena. Our mission is to defend the goddess' dignity, protect the goddess, and give up everything for the goddess. So many years have passed, and everything has become irreversible. Why are you still so stubborn? The woman called Gemini snorted coldly. It's not that I want an internal strife. I just want to get back what I deserve. As long as Yama dies, I will naturally get back the divinity of the goddess Athena. The winner is king, and the loser is the bandit. Mephistopheles, do you still understand? They were both constellation guardians, and their numbers were the same. In terms of combat power, the six led by Soso and Gemini were not as strong as Mephistopheles' group of six. However, Soso and the other four Constellation Guardians were all equipped with Constellation Guardian equipment, and the advantage in equipment had tilted the scales of victory towards them. Mephistopheles sighed. In China, there's a saying, "We were born from the same root. Why are we in such a hurry to destroy each other?" Gemini's voice became full of resentment. You also know this saying? That's right, you did not kill me back then, but you brought me to the abyss of pain. Why did Yama take away what should have belonged to me? Why is she the successor of the goddess Athena, while I became Gemini? All of this was caused by you. That's right, I have indeed planned for many years, waiting for this opportunity. It is easier said than done to not fuse with the divine weapon of Athena. You don't have to waste time. How can you compare to my understanding of the calamity of the goddess Athena? I will give you a chance. Surrender to me. As long as I become the successor of the goddess Athena, you will still be the original Constellation Guardians. Mephistopheles shook his head. Gemini, you are too childish. Ever since Miss Yamu inherited the divinity of the goddess Athena, everything has become irreversible. Since you insist on doing this, you will be the one to regret it in the end. That's right. I admit that your understanding of the gifts of the goddess Athena is deeper than mine. That is because your aura can be summoned by the divine weapon, but compared to Miss, you are still lacking. Since this opportunity was specially prepared by Miss for you, do you really think that Miss did not have any preparations? Gemini seemed slightly uneasy and slowly walked towards the direction of Mephistopheles' group of six. Since that is the case, then let me see what Yama has prepared. Strength is everything that decides victory or defeat. At this point, do you think that I will still retreat and can retreat? The conversation between the two did not cause the mentality of the other Constellation Guardians to change. It was obvious that they already knew each other's secrets. They were all Constellation Guardians, and the battle between them was about to happen. 5 rays of light shone from the backs of the Constellation Guardians, and a huge energy aura began to spread. Although the sun in the sky was still there, the light in the sky had clearly dimmed. Stars appeared in the sky, and the energy had begun to change. The Pope moved, and he followed behind Soso, while walking towards Mephistopheles' group of 6. Mephistopheles was very clear how powerful the Pope was. With him as the leader and the 6 Constellation Guardians, there was no longer any suspense in the battle. However, at this moment, Mephistopheles' expression was still calm, and he shouted loudly, "Miss, until now, have you still not made a decision? Everything in Greece needs you. For your mission, you have to give up something." Mephistopheles' words shocked everyone present, and the Gemini also stopped in their tracks. Just at this moment of mutual hostility, a mournful scream suddenly rang out. Chi-Yu, who had been quietly lying on the ground, suddenly trembled. His body floated up from the ground, and in that instant his body turned a jade-like green. The energy aura that had originally disappeared instantly grew stronger, and green dots of light could clearly be seen surging towards his chest at the speed of light. Chi-Yu's eyes were filled with shock, and his face became even paler. The moment Mephistopheles finished speaking, the originally calm suction force of the Kirin orb suddenly increased by hundreds of times, and the huge suction force caused Chi-Yu's body to change violently. Then his chest became numb, and every part of his body was no longer under his control. The huge energy aura did not belong to him, and even his own source of energy no longer belonged to him. It was filled with the incomparably sacred aura, and then the power of his source of energy was completely released. All the natural creatures within a radius of hundreds of square kilometers were sucked in by the huge energy produced by his chest, filtered through his body of the source of nature, and quickly rushed towards the Kirin orb. The continuous filtration and condensation of natural energy not only turned Chi Yu's body into a filter, but at the same time, his own life force was constantly being filtered and condensed by the natural energy. The last trace of thundercloud force in his body completely disappeared at the moment when the suction force suddenly increased, and he clearly and strangely felt that a part of his life force was leaving his body. Although there were no changes on the surface, his body was deteriorating rapidly, and the body that had been transformed by the source of nature was rapidly developing in the direction of exhaustion. Gemini was the first to react, and a strong sense of unease rose in her heart. Quick, do it! With her, as the leader, the 6 constellation guardians rushed forward at the same time. After the Pope stopped moving forward, he did not move again because of Gemini and the 6 constellation guardians. He just stood there, quietly watching everything that was happening in front of him, his eyes flashing, as if he was thinking about something. Mephisto roared, and the 12 constellation guardians collided in the air. Mephisto faced Gemini, and the other 10 constellation guardians also faced their own opponents. At this moment, they were no longer partners, but enemies. Gemini had already seen the unease in Chi Yu, and at the same time, she also felt the aura of goddess Athena. It was the energy of the artifact and the signs of the mutation of Athena's divinity that filled her with a sense of horror. She had completely suppressed the opponent. How could she still fail at the last step? So, she only had one goal, and that was to prevent what happened to Chi Yu. And Mephisto's mission was exactly the opposite of hers. He and the other constellation guardians only had one goal, and that was to protect everything behind them, so that the ritual that he was looking forward to could be completed smoothly. Chi Yu's body trembled violently like a sieve. Because of the loss of energy, the Kirin mutation on his body had already disappeared. But the hair that returned to black at this time, because of the continuous weakening of his body, it had actually turned gray, and it looked like it was filled with a deathly, still aura. Even his eyes that were always shining had completely dimmed, turning into a dark gray. The Kirin tattoo on his chest was constantly in the process of disappearing, and even the muscles of his body were constantly shrinking. At this time, Chi Yu's mind was completely blank. Of course, he knew where the suction force came from, but he really did not want to believe that at this moment, it would actually become like this. Life, the woman in the Qilin bead, actually wanted his life. Body trembling, Chi Yu's expression became very strange. At this time, he already understood the reason for the change in his body. In that unbelievable despair, he was smiling, but from the corner of his eyes, 2 lines of tears flowed down. The tears were pale red, looking very strange. The battle in the field brought about a huge energy fluctuation. From the beginning of the battle, Gemini's side had the absolute upper hand. However, as Constellation Guardians, even if Mephisto and the other 5 did not have the Constellation Guardian equipment, but in a battle of full strength, it was easier said than done for Gemini's side to win. Your Holiness, are you still not going to make a move? Don't forget our agreement. Gemini shouted angrily. Pope Marty waved the scepter in his hand toward the ground. His body slowly floated up, rising tens of meters above the ground, and said calmly, I only promised you to ask for the Dracula family's people, but now it's an internal struggle in Greece. As the head of the Western Vatican, I can't participate in it. I'm sorry, mysterious Miss Gemini. Gemini was enraged. Her body instantly retreated, and a special electronic voice sounded from her mouth. Destroy. In her strange voice, the bodies of Mephisto and the other 5 trembled at the same time, and their minds instantly became blank. Their attacks naturally paused, and their bodies were bombarded back at the same time. Even Mephisto's eyes became a little dazed. In the midst of several loud noises, with the help of the Constellation Guardian equipment, So and the other 4 immediately closed in on the other 5, and Mephisto and the other 5 received varying degrees of injuries. Gemini's body instantly became illusory, turning into a phantom that flashed past the slightly sluggish Mephisto. The moment they passed, Mephisto felt his body tremble violently, as if he had been electrocuted. It was not a physical attack, but a spiritual attack. Gemini's close combat ability was not considered strong, but on the spiritual level, the gap between her and the other Constellation Guardians was not just one level. The moment Gemini and Mephisto passed, the green light condensing around Chi-Yu's body in the air disappeared. His jade-like body had turned golden, and a mournful voice spread from his chest. Sorry, 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 sorry. The female voice that sounded like a cuckoo crying blood was filled with boundless sorrow. The Chilan pearl that had already turned completely golden was releasing golden ripples. Seeing this scene, Gemini immediately became anxious. At the same time, she also understood where Chi-Yu had hidden Yamu. Her body that was rushing forward suddenly increased her speed by 30% in midair. She stretched out her right hand, and a sharp golden light was released from her spring-like fingers. At the same time, her huge spiritual power was forcibly condensed into the shape of a spear, and it spun like a whirlpool towards the Kiran bead. Boom! A loud sound exploded on Gemini's spiritual level. Her body that was rushing forward stopped in front of Chi-Yu. Her whole body visibly trembled, and her speed suddenly decreased. A strong golden light with an incomparably holy aura came out from the Kiran bead. It was a spear. The tip of the spear was 3 feet long, and the golden sharpness was like a huge longsword. It went straight for Gemini's chest. Gemini was shocked. She was rushing forward, and the sudden attack in front of her caught her unprepared. She barely leaned her body to the right, and both her palms hit the side of the spear at the same time. The spear paused slightly, and an irresistible force immediately threw Gemini away. While her body was still flying in mid-air, Gemini shouted in shock, "No, impossible! How can it fuse so quickly?" Following the appearance of the golden spear, the golden light condensed in front of Chi-Yu. When the golden figure gradually became clear, the golden light on her body gradually dimmed, revealing her original appearance. After revealing her human form, Chi-Yu, who was behind her, slowly slid down from the sky. There was not a single trace of luster on his skin. As the golden light faded, his body had already become lifeless. Whether it was energy or the aura of life, it was completely stripped away. He did not die. His grayish-white eyes were filled with unwillingness and disbelief. Even now, he was not willing to believe that all of this was real. Perhaps it was because all of this happened too quickly. Chi-Yu did not even have the time to feel resentment. However, everything that happened in front of him had already set off a monstrous wave in his heart. What did he do all of this for? Apart from his goal in coming to the West this time, the rest of his thoughts were on how to protect her. However, at the last moment, just when everything was about to end and there was hope for everything, he was the one who was destroyed. When the hope in his heart turned into despair, not only was Chi-Yu's body about to die, but at the same time, his heart also completely fell into a dead silence.